on it when this actually uploads, because YouTube always starts recording before it tells me it's recording. But thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me tonight. I'm your host. I am BC. This is the BryantChambers movement in conjunction with Clients Incoming, or Alloy 7 if you know me from way back on YouTube. But tonight's going to be dedicated. Apologies for the slightly dark settings. Harvey D, thanks for coming out tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Forgive me for the slightly dark video settings tonight. We've got lighting issues here in my office. Raven made it. Thank you for setting your alarm, Raven. You are truly a saint for getting up at what I believe is 3:30 in the morning for you. So God bless you for coming out. Just a couple administrative notes before we jump headlong into tonight's discussion. This will also give everyone that's planning to come out tonight a few more minutes to get here. Pascal, yo, made it. Thank you for coming out. It's 2:30, so I was off by a little bit. Few administrative notes. I'm going to be using the whiteboard tonight. That's why I wanted to come into my office. But I can see that my children have been in my office because a lot of our lighting is not working, because I'm sure of shenanigans that have been taking place in my office. And I'll be going off screen here to interact with all of you on YouTube. We're not broadcasting on Facebook tonight because of the setup, but I will be coming over here to actually get your comments, because as you all know, I can see the comments as they pull up here on the phone, but they don't stay on the screen. So for those of you that write longer form questions and comments, I want to be able to interact with that. So there'll be some times where I'm over here. There'll be some times when I'm up in the camera. Brandon Elwell says, hey, BC, I'm ready for more inspiration. Yes, indeed. Very glad. I'm actually to be happy Friday from Steve Torres. Thanks, Torres. Appreciate it, my friend. I'm actually really excited to share tonight's discussion. This is something that has been a long time coming. I held off doing this on Clients Incoming until I could get my personal, what we call the BryantChambers movement up and running and having some momentum and some followership, because I felt like where I was with Clients Incoming, there was this huge transition between just being the YouTube dude to, okay, let's be a little bit more holistic in our approach to branding and marketing and using social media to truly spread a message and truly spread a vision for the world that's better than the one we live in now. Now, I'm not saying that as a cynic. I am one of the firm believers that we live in the best of times, but I still think there's some improvements that we need to make. In fact, I would argue that humanity is behind schedule, at least from the way that I measure where we could be if we could get over some of the foolishness that's going on in the world. And this is some of the stuff that they don't teach us in school, but it's some of the stuff that I've either learned from other people smarter than me, I've learned through military training, corporate training, running my own business, failing at running my own business for many years, starting to see some success now, but still figuring some things out. A lot of you are on this journey with me, and I'm actually looking forward to the day when I can sell out a stadium or a theater where I can talk to a lot of you live. But we're working our way up to that, rest assured. A lot of what I'm going to share with you tonight is not going to be extremely complicated, okay? I want you to be aware of that off the break, because I believe a lot of the solutions to the challenge. Oh, Juliana even made it. Hello, Juliana. Thanks for coming. Who else popped in here? I think that a lot of the solutions to the challenges we face in life are not that complicated. In fact, I'd argue that the search we have for complicated answers is often what derails us from finding the simple answer and then just executing. And where it usually goes wrong is two ways. Either you're being shown how to do things by people who maybe don't know, they may be well-intentioned, or you're being talked to by someone who's trying to sell you something. The American education economy centers around a lot of ignorance. So a lot of people that teach things often will say, I've got this highly complicated formula that's going to improve your life. And a lot of their focus is, let's find out what your weaknesses are and beat you to death so that we can turn those into strengths. And it's fundamentally wrong. Like, there's been tons of study that have gone into observing humans, observing business, and understanding that when you put people in the place they're designed to be in, they crush it, right? But when you try to force somebody to be what they are not, then you breed insecurity, you breed what looks like incompetence, but often it's not. It's that you've put somebody in the wrong position. And it's not just in career. This goes for relationships. This goes for human interaction, just life in general. If you are in a place where your skill set, your way of thinking, your outlook on life is not respected, merited, and encouraged, you're never going to be effective. It's like Peter Drucker says in Managing Oneself, right? You can't build any success on weakness. It has to be built on strength. But a lot of our school systems, for example, will say, oh, he's weak, and pick a subject, right? So instead of saying, okay, maybe this dude's not the best in math, but he's a killer with creativity and writing. Why are we trying to force calculus down his throat? It's just not there. He doesn't need to be a nuclear physicist or an engineer or a computer scientist. Maybe this person is designed to be a copywriter for a major company. Maybe they're designed to write books. Think of people like J.R.R. Tolkien, right? And if you're not familiar with who that is, that's who wrote The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. It just takes a little bit of encouragement, starting with you fully understanding yourself. So if you didn't know, if I didn't explain this part of the story, the reason why this channel, why I focus so heavily on psychology and on understanding personality types, it's not because I'm an expert in psychology. Okay, I didn't study psychology in school. Matter of fact, I didn't even take a psychology class when I was in college or in high school. I did take some philosophy though. I studied this on my own after having been taken through personality testing in my late teens, early 20s, I think. It was the first time I did it. It's been going on for a long time that I've been studying this stuff. And as an NT personality type, I'm insanely curious about understanding why things work the way they do and why things are the way they are, right? And so what I learned on this process is that so many people really don't understand what makes them them. So you spend a lot of time in your life going all over the world trying to figure out who you are. You ever hear people talking about trying to find themselves? Well, I had people help me do that early in my life. I made some mistakes on my road, okay? I made some heavy career mistakes. I talk about it a lot on my channel where I completely broke from my personality and my skill set to chase money. And I don't mean chasing money like in my business, like taking advantage of people. I mean taking a job where the money was great, but the work for me was absolutely horrible. Okay, and it's not to say that the work was horrible, because I don't think there's a such thing. There's no good or bad. It was a bad fit for me. And so I talk a lot about that because one of the reasons why I talk so much about this is because I want you all to have the discussion. I'm not an expert trying to teach it to you. I'm a curious soul trying to share it with you and have a discussion with you so that you can have your own self-discovery. It's not me trying to tell you who you are. I can't do that for you. You have to do it. But that's at the core of what we're going to be talking about tonight, especially as it relates to you picking the right career. For my YouTubers who are watching from the old Alloy 7 or Clients Incoming, I know I invited you here as well. And this is going to be very helpful because a lot of you ask me, should I drop out of school to start a YouTube channel? Well, the answer there is 99 times out of 100 is going to be no, unless YouTube is giving you so much traction and attention that you're able to actually build some type of living off of it right now. Otherwise, we'll go through some personality type stuff to figure out if you're even wired to do this type of work. But more importantly, if you are wired to do it, the advice would be to sustain yourself while you build this as a side hustle. It's exactly what I do, okay? I've said many times that YouTube is by no means my primary source of income. Not even close. All right, the programs that I run, it's not even, I don't even know the multiple of how much more money the work that I do coaching and helping people makes versus AdSense when I used to actually run ads on my videos. But with that said, I just wanted to give some background about why I spend so much time with personality types, and it's because if you don't start with a fundamental understanding of who you are, what makes you tick, what makes you what, who, and how you are, then you're going to be off target. It's like, I always give the example, if I'm trying to fire a rifle to hit a target, if my sight picture is off here, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I do, how I move to try to hit the target. If my sight is off here close to me, when I squeeze the trigger, it's going to be off crazily by the time it gets to the target. Okay, because that bullet's going to come out and start doing this. And the target's here and the bullet's just going to go there. But if my sight is good in here, then I can hit any target that I aim at, right? It's probably an oversimplified example, but I say that to help people understand that if you don't start at the foundation, at the core, then you're going to spend a lot of time searching for something and not knowing when you're going to find it, because you're basically trying to build a house without laying the foundation is what I'm getting at. So that is why I spend so much time doing personality type discussions along with the daily vlog for encouragement, talking about marriage and relationships and careers, etc., etc., etc. I believe this fundamental principle that I'm about to show you tonight is at the root of me dropping books off of my shelf of fame here. Colonel Grossman's On Killing, dynamite book. I believe for you combat vets that follow me, okay, or soon to be combat vets, like if you're new in the military, please read this book before you finish your career, and read his second book on combat. Those books should be mandatory reading, and everybody I think should read it. There's a lot of historical information I think that would be very helpful just in life in general. A lot of psychological information when they talk about like PTSD, and it's not just obviously related to soldiers or law enforcement officers, and what that truly is. So I work with a lot of people here that struggle with that, just like I have. So definitely read those two books. I asked Colonel Grossman to be an advisor for me when I get ready to launch my veteran focus program, which I started last year, but then I put it on hold because I needed to build some of these other things first. And I just asked him, hey, I was like, sir, when I get ready to launch this, and I showed him there's like a website for it and everything. I said, sir, please take a look at this. Can you advise me? I really need someone you've been in the trenches helping soldiers and helping law enforcement people for almost as many years as I've had a career. Or more than that. And I wanted him as an advisor, and he wrote me back. He's like, yeah, dude, just keep rocking. I read both of his books. They literally changed my life. I actually teared up pretty heavily at the end of On Combat because it's just that potent, man. It's that powerful. So I want to read something for you tonight to really set the conversation off. Now, be aware, I see that a lot of you are commenting and I'm not addressing those yet. As soon as I get through this intro, I'll get into some comments. But I do want to read the fundamental principle tonight. This is really the thesis that a lot of what I do on this channel is based off of. And I'm going to share it with you tonight. It's a simple book that you can go pick up. The one you find probably won't be as thick as mine because it won't have all of this extra credit information about wars that these folks were involved in. So a lot of people see my copy of Art of War and then they go find one and they're scared to buy it because they're like, wait a minute, ours is like half the size of yours. Am I getting the right book? And you are. This one has a lot of other anecdotal historical information in it that technically you don't have to read if you don't want to. And the actual Art of War book is not that long. But you want to have happy career. You want to have happy marriage. I know I talk about that a lot with our marriage programs and whatnot. You want to have just a life in general where you find some level of fulfillment. Like, and I'm not promising you that it's going to be freaking rainbows and unicorns. You know, I love to use that term because it's such a derogatory way to really X out a lot of the BS that's going on in the internet about being happy and finding your place and all this kind of gee whiz hype talk that a lot of people do. You know, some motivational talks are wonderful, but a lot of them are just filled with fluff and no practicality. No, how do I act? Okay, thanks, Confucius. Now, how do I go actually freaking execute this in my life? And that's what I wanted to dedicate this channel to. All right, and there's a fundamental principle in this book. We're going to get to it here in a second, The Art of War, which is the centerpiece of this whole entire, we have to be what I call violently self-aware. Violently self-aware. Now, I don't mean violence. You know, I use a lot of choice language because it gets attention. But I'm not talking about violence like hurting people. I'm talking about intensity. Like when I work out in the gym, it is violent, right? I love my kids fiercely. Doesn't mean I'm fierce to them. It just means the love that I have for them is so intense. You know, I would wrestle a bear for my children. You see what I'm saying? So, the fundamental principle. Let's get into it before I start blabbering. Becoming violently self-aware. And I think Sun Tzu said it better than anybody, so I'm just going to read it. I quote this all the time and I butcher the quote, so I'm going to read it tonight. Where are we? Nope, I'm in the wrong page. Probably would help if we got to the right page, wouldn't it? They all start looking the same. Here we go. Thus it is said that one who knows the enemy and knows him or herself. This book was written a long time ago, so there's no gender equality in these books. Thus it is said that one who knows the enemy and knows him or herself will not be endangered in 100 engagements. Now, this is a general talking to other leaders in a combat situation, but there's a lot of connections you can make between combat and real life. Those who've been in combat totally understand what I mean. The only real difference is the level of intensity. Going to work and having to deal with someone who drives you absolutely insane is a little bit different than getting artillery shells dropped on your position, but the principle is the same. Okay, and if you don't have the experience of having artillery dropped on you, it's not fun, by the way, then something happening at work could be just as stressful for you as getting artillery dropped on a soldier could be for them, because it becomes relative in your mind because of your frame of reference. So, thus it is said, one who knows the enemy and knows himself or herself will not be endangered in 100 engagements. Let's keep going just a little bit. One who does not know the enemy but knows himself will sometimes be victorious, sometimes meet with defeat. One who knows neither the enemy nor himself will invariably be defeated in every engagement. Now, if the wise Sun Tzu is trying to get across to you that in a war where life is on the line, it's mandatory, it's absolutely necessary that you are aware of yourself. Why would that be any different in your life? Life is a life or death situation. Some of the decisions that you may make in your life could be life or death decisions, especially depending on what you do or what your life experience is. It's no different than being in war. Now, the stakes in war may be a little bit higher, but believe me, war is just, it's the greatest affair of state. It's just an exacerbated version of the conflicts that happen in our day-to-day lives, arguing over who should be president, right? That is a war. It just doesn't have bullets and RPGs and artillery getting dropped on you physically. Say emotionally, absolutely. Okay, so you see the connection. If you don't know you and you know your enemy, you're going to lose 50-50. Excuse me. If you don't know yourself and you don't know your enemy, you're doomed, is what he's saying. Now, let me change some of the language around because we're not talking about a physical war. What is the enemy that we're talking about? In this particular case, the enemy is not just a person who's trying to do you harm. Now, spiritual people who follow me, of which I am too, you may think of the enemy as being like Satan or Lucifer, right? That there's a spiritual enemy that you fight, like the scripture that talks about the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God for the pulling down of strongholds and powers and principalities in the air, right? So there's a spiritual element that's very much like warfare. So when you hear enemy, that may be what you think. But I want to focus a little bit more on just the natural world for tonight. This discussion where the enemy you're trying to fight, let's just change the language a little bit. The person that knows herself or himself and knows the problem she or he is trying to solve will never be endangered of failing. If you know you and you know where you're going, you know what problem you're trying to solve, you know what goal you're trying to achieve. It doesn't even have to be a problem. If you know what goal you're trying to achieve, what is the end game? When you lay down and take your last breath, what is the thing you want to have accomplished on this earth? If you are violently self-aware and violently aware of that thing, you can't lose because you have your entire lifetime to build toward it. And when you know those things, you can become laser focused. Instead of like most people, we bounce from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing to thing to thing because nobody takes the time to teach us what I'm about to show you tonight. Okay, and a lot of times people don't take the time out to teach us because they don't know. Now, I'm fortunate. I've had a lot of mentors that have helped me with this and still help me with this. Okay, so like I always say, Why do I not run ads on my channel? Because I believe the stuff that I've been giving, I have a duty to give it away for free. That includes not running ads, because your time is not free. Your time is certainly not cheap, and I refuse to waste it by watching freaking Budweiser ads while you wait to listen to me talk. Okay? Now, we understand what we need to do, right? And that's where a lot of the other stuff will stop. You just need to know yourself, dude. Great. How do I do that? How do I put practicality? Conceptually, that's going to make sense to everybody. I don't think I shared anything here with anybody that was groundbreakingly, oh my God, I never thought of that. Right? Remember, I said everything is going to be simple. Nothing I'm sharing with you tonight is going to be complicated. That's the beauty. Because trust me, if a person who barely made it out of high school and college, well, not barely, but if a person that barely got C's in high school and college can figure this out, trust me, some of you that follow me are a lot smarter than I am. Okay? Just cognitively. So if I can figure this stuff out, you have certainly got a fighting chance of making it happen. But the one thing I will preface that I didn't say at the beginning is that this isn't going to be easy. Okay? Don't confuse simplicity for easiness. You feel me? Simple just means I'm not going to give you a lot of complicated things that you need to accomplish. But it doesn't mean this is going to be easy, especially when it comes to understanding yourself. Self-awareness is a lifelong journey. Every day, every experience is going to teach you something about yourself, especially the stressful ones. With that said, before I jump into the next piece, let's look at the comments, make sure I'm not missing anything. Because like I said, I don't want to talk too long because I want to give as much time as possible for questions and answers. Okay? I want to make sure we have enough time for that, so I want to make sure I haven't missed any questions here, and then I'll jump right back into this. Shouldn't take me more than about 20 minutes to get through all of it at the most. Now, let's see. Raven says 2:30. Okay. Happy Friday. Juliana says hi. Sean Prater says, here to leech off of your knowledge and experience. Not leeching, man. I'm giving it out for free. So you don't have to leech, brother. I freely give, freely receive. Daniel Lagos says hi to everyone. Pascal says, preach. Somebody's an INFP, which is all. I don't know. So Pascal said somebody's an INFP. I'm not sure who that is, but there are quite a few INFPs who follow me. Sean says, math has always been my Achilles heel, but reading and writing, I was always advanced beyond my grade level. There you go. We're going to get into that tonight. Great comment. Let's see. Sean Prater says, I'm a card-carrying INFJ, the rarest personality type on the planet, I believe, or at least in the United States. I think it varies from country to country, continent to continent. Juliana says, oh yeah, this sounds like that quote. When there are no enemies within, there is no outside enemy. Something such as that. I like that. Sean Prater says, that sounds a lot like spiritual warfare. Yes, I was talking about spiritual warfare when I quoted that Bible verse. Budweiser ad, says Pascal. Excellent. So we're caught up. So everyone got the point. We've got to become violently self-aware. And this is the thing that is your guiding lights. We're talking about in our Good Life Playbook, the Marriage Experience Program, I'm actually working on a much more detailed version of this where I break out and have worksheets and stuff. Like I'm going to make people do work. I don't want to do that on a live show because I think I'd put you all to sleep. But in that program, we're going to have, because I think a happy, fulfilling marriage starts with two people who fix everything they can about themselves before they come together and bring the crazy into their own crazy baggage. And you're going to have stuff you bring into the relationship. You're never going to be perfect, but to the degree that you can weed out the weeds and leave the good, it's going to set you up for success. So I've got an entire, again, simple, not complex, but not necessarily easy because people have got to go out and do actual work. But when it comes to a career, it's the same as a marriage in terms of how do I pick the right path? Well, it starts with becoming violently self-aware, like Sun Tzu said. And you'll notice, if you can read the board on camera, let me get close so I can see if you guys can actually read the words. It looks like you can. You'll notice that the word passion here is singled out, and there's a reason why. And I want you to take notice of the fact that the word passion is at the end. Right? That is on purpose. All right? Because you're going to get a lot of people telling you, oh, just follow your passion. I don't think that alone is the best advice. I just read an awesome book that I should have brought into my office called Be So Good They Can't Ignore You, where he actually argues with the thesis that you shouldn't follow your passion. I think that's a little bit too and the book is that thesis is slightly misleading, but there's obviously passion involved in what you do. But I think his bottom line core thesis is sound, that you shouldn't just follow something that you're passionate about because it can mislead you. But we'll get into that in a minute. So becoming violently self-aware. First step, going back to what I said at the beginning of the video, the reason why I do so many personality type videos is not to be your expert or your guru in psychology. It's to alert you to the fact that these things are here. Here is what I know or think as of today, because some of it's not etched in stone. And because some of the videos that I make, I get people that disagree with what I'm saying. And that's great. I want that, because I think what some of the folks that have become angry don't realize is I'm not preaching this as gospel. I'm just telling you this is what I've observed as a person who's been studying, working with, and leading humans for his entire life, as even before I was a full adult. I've observed a lot of things, okay? And I'm just bringing to bear what I've seen, which is at the core of the scientific method, is observing, coming up with, I have an idea, and then running your experiments, getting your observations, collecting the data, and making conclusions, right? So the first step here, this is why I talk so much about personality types. It's not so that you can just rely on me to tell you everything about yourself, because I don't know. And first of all, regardless of what personality type you are, I don't care what book, what website, what test you take, some of it's going to be wrong. Because what's not factored into those tests is life experience, which we're going to get into tonight when we talk about skills. Okay? Some of the information, it's not wrong, it just doesn't apply to you. Like, there's things, I'm an ENTJ. There's things about ENTJ that are completely not like me, because I don't care. But I've seen things in my life that, Simon Sinek said on an interview with Gary Vaynerchuk. It was one of the most profound statements, because they were talking about how trauma shapes people. And Simon Sinek was like, trauma doesn't change your why. It makes your why more pronounced, because now you think everything else is stupid. Because once you've been through losing a friend in combat, or having a friend that got shot in the face in combat, knowing somebody, I wasn't close with him, but I knew him, a guy that got his finger shot off, having a friend of mine get shot literally in his butt, right? When you see those things, a lot of the stuff that people fuss about in the real world, it's like, are you kidding me? Is that what we're fussing about tonight? I tell the story about the guy in the gym who was getting irate with the young girl who worked the desk because yoga got canceled, and it looked like he was going to put his hands on her. He was screaming at her so loud, and I was standing there to make sure it didn't happen. But the thing that made me angry wasn't just that this dude was a jerk. It was literally his whole world melted because his yoga class was canceled. And I was maybe a year removed from getting the news that one of my good friends had been killed in combat by an IED, right? Like, come on, dude. So when you experience things in your life, they're going to shape who you are, regardless of what your personality type says. So never take personality type tests, none of the tests you take, as this is your etched in stone self. You have to fit into this pigeonhole, because you're never going to fit into it perfectly. Personality types for me is an evolving discussion, not an exact science. There are some that would disagree with me. There's even some scientists now that are tying it to biology, which is cool. I like that, because then that's measurable. But it still isn't a lockdown thing. So don't try to pigeonhole yourself, but do take the knowledge in. Keep the stuff that makes sense. Don't worry about the stuff that doesn't apply. So I have MBTI written here. That's Myers-Briggs Type Indicator Test. There's, God only knows at this point on the internet how many ways you can take it. You can certainly pay to take it and take the really in-depth one, but I've taken many of them. I can tell you the stuff I've taken on the internet is good enough. I shot a video recently, I think it comes out next week, called Good Enough is Perfect. Stop looking for the perfect solution, because it doesn't exist. But taking the Myers-Briggs test, just as an example, you may have a personality type test that you like better. I've been dabbling in Enneagram. I like that. I'm going to start talking about that on the channel in the future. I like the Hexaco test. I'm going to talk about that in the future. I've actually got the people in our marriage program taking that test now, because we're going to discuss it in our June series of videos. But the point is, take the tests. If you've never taken them, do it, because they're going to help you. They're going to give you some of the elements you need to be violently self-aware. The first time you take it, it may seem a little daunting. You may get some of the stuff. You may not answer 100% honestly, because we may be insecure about a thing and we want to be like this, but we kind of know we really aren't. That's why when I talk about being on the line between J and P, I'm really not. I'm a J, right? There's just some things about P that I like, and sometimes I don't answer 100% honestly, right? So we got to know what our personality type is, and tied to our personality type. So if there's, step one is the overarching step is be violently self-aware. Number one of the easiest ways to do it is start taking personality tests. You can go to 16personalities.com. You can go to humanmetrics.com. You can just search for the Hexaco and Enneagram test. There's 2 good sites that will give you those, and you'll be good to go. Once you've got your personality type down, let's figure out what are your core values. What are the things you're unwilling to compromise on? I had an amazing conversation with, I'll call her a young lady. She's not incredibly young. I mean, compared to me, but still relatively young. And she was just telling me about, she had some convictions about relationships that she was unwilling to compromise on. And I applauded her for it. I was like, that's freaking amazing, because that's going to be your guiding light. Never, like if that's a thing that's serious to you, that's one of your values, this is something you will not budge on, own it. All right? Part of the problem I think a lot of us have is that people who've had a hand in shaping who we are, whether it's parents or peers or peer pressure or bullies or people that, if you're like me and you grew up getting freaking picked on because you were different, right, before I got big. See, no one picks on me now because I'm bigger than everybody. I got picked on a lot when I was 4'11" until I was almost 16 years old. So, but if that's you, some of that stuff's going to shape who you are. But you got to know at the core, what are the values that drive you? Is it honesty? Is it, there's a bunch of different ways you can look up values, but is it honesty? Is it integrity? Like if you look at one of the core, like the core value, I think if I had to pick one, and I hate to pick one because they're all very important, but I keep my stuff simple. One of the primary core values of my business and people who are in my business is we are Stoics. All right, and that's a hard term to lock down depending on who you ask, but my definition of it is people who will go out of their way to the point of their own having to give of themselves more than what they're asking for in return from the people we're serving. So what does that look like? That looks like me giving at least 51% and only asking for 49% back. If I'm working with a client, if I'm working with a person, and a lot of times when I'm working to help people here, I'm not asking for anything back. It's 100% give. And if somebody should so happen to give me something back, fine. But if they don't, I'm just happy, like Dick Winters from the Band of Brothers in Easy Company in World War II said, I'm just happy to know that the men respected me. And I say men because obviously his unit was all men. So you got to know values. Remember, be violently self-aware like Sun Tzu says. And right now we're just talking about knowing yourself. We haven't started talking about the enemy yet, okay? So the 2 things you need to know, 1 is you, 2 is goal, okay? Or enemy, or problem that you're trying to solve. Okay, these are the 2 things that these steps are going to cover. Next, once you lock down your values, the things that you won't budge on, and this is insanely important, maybe almost more than anything else when it comes to career, because no matter how skilled you are or how well you know you or your motivations, if you go into a company that does not share your values, and I've done this, please hear me. If you go into a company that does not share your values, you will be ineffective. Because you are not going to change the culture of an entire company as a singular individual unless you stay there for 30 years to become the CEO of it, and you're still going to struggle to change the culture because you're dealing with an organism that's full of human beings. Human beings, by the way, are not very rational creatures. They're very emotional. So whatever their core values are, there's emotion tied to the way they behave. And for you to ask them to change is a bridge too far. But here's the deal. Asking you to change in your career, also a bridge too far. It's not a good relationship. You've got to bounce. Okay, if you find yourself in a place where it's just like, look, where I'm going and where this place is trying to go, no, then you got to go. Now, I also made a video titled How to Quit a Job That You Hate. And it was very positive. Like, I use hard terminology because it gets people's attention, but in no way was it me crapping on somebody's company. It was just saying, look, You realizing that you want to go one way, they want to go another way. You need to come to a peaceful agreement that says, look, I'm not changing. You shouldn't ask me to change organization. Organization is saying, yeah, the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you everything I got while I'm here, because that's what I signed on for. Do the best I can. Even though I'm in a culture that just does not suit me, I'll still try. Like I won't be amazing here because I don't have the DNA to be amazing here, but I'll at least do the best I can to help you in however you ask me while I'm finding my escape route. Okay? And that's important, but that's driven by understanding your values and understanding yourself. Because self is going to determine what type of job you're going to be good at. Values is going to determine what type of organization you should be partnering with. Remember, when a company gives you money, they're not doing you a favor. And especially for you young folks, you need to hear this. And by young, I mean like 18 to 20. Okay, I'm not talking. If there's 12-year-olds watching, by all means, mazel tov, God bless you. But do not think that because a company is going to hand you a salary, they're doing you a favor. They're paying for services, right? Which means you are valuable to them. And I'd argue that you're more valuable to them than the other way around. Now, the American picture has been painted that these corporations are doing you a great favor by giving you the salary. No, they're not. They're paying you a lot less than, and this is what you need to hear. They're paying you a lot less than they would pay. If the organization was one person, guess what? He's paying you a lot less than he would pay himself to do the same work. And I don't care how godly or saintly or good the person is, they're going to pay you less than they would pay themselves. It's just human nature. Okay, I think I know of one person who purposefully runs his company where he pays his employees more than he pays himself. You know, so, and that's cool, but he has the resources to do that too. Some companies can't do that, right, to attract the talent that they need. But the bottom line is, if you know yourself, this keeps you out of getting jobs that don't suit you. And I mean, your personality is going to pre-position you to be good at something. Like I always say, I'd never make a good accountant. And I had somebody years ago try to hire me as an accountant. And she was like, because it'll be a promotion and I'm trying to help you out. I said, look, I love you for what you're trying to do for me. I really, really do, because we're friends and I appreciate that you're looking out for somebody that's in the trenches with you. And, you know, we've taken a liking to each other. But I told her, I said, look, I would do you a disservice in that job because I will suck at it because it's not in my DNA. Can I do accounting? Of course. I run a business. I have to be able to do it. But believe me, my books go to an accountant every year to get them correct because it's not my skill set. And knowing that it's not my skill set, it would be stupid of me to take myself away from what my skill set is, which, by the way, is leading, influencing, mentoring, and developing people and teams, to spend 1,000 hours becoming a mediocre accountant when I've got somebody that's a freaking lightning bolt whiz genius at it who I can just give some money to, and my books are cool. And that's the way you have to start thinking, okay? Especially for those of you who have approached me with the entrepreneurial, like I want to run my own thing, then you have to know what you're good at. Because if you're spending a lot of your time doing stuff that you're not good at, you're wasting your time and you're doing a disservice and hurting your company. Now, again, back to values, and I'm harping on this because I've lived through this. This is such a hard lesson for me, where you go to a company not knowing that their values are nope compared to yours. And by the way, I'm not saying their values are wrong. I'm not saying their values are bad. They're just different, and they're too different from yours. Like when I say that I'm a stoic, been in companies where it's all about my promotion. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to get it. And we're going to sit in this meeting and talk about, I don't like the pictures on the conference room wall. When this is literally an organization that's supposed to be taking care of my brothers and sisters who are getting RPGs launched at them every day. And we're talking about pictures on a freaking conference room wall. Okay? That's a hard meeting for me to sit through without throwing a chair. Because if we're people that are supposed to be aiding people doing a thing that could help them live or die, again, going back to my story, losing friends in combat, and that's what we came to this meeting to talk about, and I'm supposed to be excited about that, you could go jump off a cliff. And knowing that, again, the organization is not wrong for caring about the pictures on the wall. I think it's stupid. It doesn't make it stupid. This is where they are. This is where they want to be. You have to let them be that. But knowing your values, the minute you hear that phrase, you know, okay, I got to balance. And this is why it's imperative when you're choosing your career, figure out the values of the company you're trying to go work for before you do not chase the paycheck. For the 1% of you here who are motivated by money, you can disregard that. Like if your main motivation is just making a lot of money and you don't care what you're doing or why you're doing it, mazel tov, just get it. Go get the money and do whatever you want. But for the other 99%, and by the way, I'm not being derogatory for that 1%. Some of you are wired that way. It's totally cool. There's nothing wrong with being motivated by material. The world will tell you it is. It's not. As long as you're not using the material to hurt people, it's fine. But what I'm saying is if that's not you, and most people I run into and coach are not motivated by material, which is why I'm saying it, then you better know the values of that company. Otherwise, you're headed for doom, like Peter Drucker said. Okay, I beat that horse to death. Motivation. One of the biggest problems people have with getting something done in any regard is knowing what motivates them. And we have to know what motivates us. This is where the money conversation comes in. We have to know what motivates us because if we know what motivates us, then we know how to reward ourselves for taking action. Some of the reason why so many people I talk to can't get to the gym is because they don't have enough they don't have something that's motivating them. They're trying to rely on sheer willpower to get it done. Not going to happen. You're not going to the gym on willpower. Not in the beginning. When you've been doing it for years like I have, it comes on autopilot. But that takes time to retrain your mind to enjoy beating yourself. In a good way, obviously. Not hurting yourself. If you know what your motivations are, then you know how to put things in front of you and you know how to make choices that are going to keep your head in the game when you get tired, when you're not getting rewarded the way you want to, when you may not be making the pay you want to. But if you know what's motivating you and at least you can see that there's light at the end of the tunnel, you can take one more step and one more step and one more step. And that's so vitally important that you know what motivates you. Because again, going back to personality and values, everything about ensuring that you enjoy your career is about making the right decisions. Or better said, making the optimal decisions. Because in some cases, I've been in places in my life where there was no right decision. You're on a bridge, you're running a security checkpoint, and someone's coming at you very fast on a moped. You don't know if it's an enemy or not. You have a team full of men. You have a group of men who are from the team that you're in charge of. And you have to make a split-second decision whether or not to shoot this guy. What's the right answer? If he's an enemy combatant and if he has some type of explosive on that vehicle, we have to shoot him because he can kill all of us if he detonates that explosive. If he's just a guy trying to get home and we happen to be in his way and we shoot him, then what? What's the right answer? The answer is you don't know because you don't have enough information. Life is going to, like I said, war and life are not that different. Life's going to throw things at you where you don't know exactly what to do. But that's when you can fall back on who, what, and how makes me who, what, and how I am. What are my values? What are the things I refuse to compromise on? What are my motivations? What the F gets me out of bed every single day? Because that's how I know I have to make that part of my goal, which we'll get to here when we talk about passion, so that I know I can stay in the fight. Like running my business, I can tell you right now, for those of you who want to run a business, it's not going to work at first. Like you're not just going to create, I didn't create products and then all of a sudden 1 million people showed up. It doesn't work. It takes time and it takes a lot of effort and it takes dealing with customers who don't always have your best interest at heart. In fact, they never do. And they're not supposed to. They're supposed to have their interest at heart. And sometimes your customers are going to send stuff to you that's just like, my God, what in the world did I sign up for? But when you know your motivation is to make a dent in the fear that's been controlling this earth for the last several millennia, then you can keep up. You just one more step, one more punch, one more round. I take that punch on the face. I don't care. I'm bleeding. I don't care because I have a mission that I have to accomplish and nothing's going to stop me from doing that. Because I know what motivates me. If I can get just one of you out of some fearful, horrible mental place where you are, and you write me, because you guys and ladies do, you write me and say, thank you, this really helped. That's enough energy for me to just, all right, one more round. We got this. Come on. Or like I use the football analogies. We're down 6. Everybody's tired. It's fourth quarter. There's 1:30 left. We got to drive 60 yards. Nobody has any gas left. Where are you going to pull from to get the energy to make that work? Motivation. If we win this game, we go to the playoffs. And we get a chance to play for the championship. You know? Or this is the first time my dad's ever seen me play, because I didn't meet my dad until I was an old man. This actually happened to me, old man, until I was older in my life. My dad's actually here watching me play. You know, or my father, my actual father who raised me, you know, I'm playing in a game and I don't know how much longer he's going to be alive because now he's bedridden. But this may be the last game he gets to watch. F that. I'm not that tired. Let's go. One more round, okay? And that comes from knowing what motivates you, what gets you out of bed every day. Because if you're getting out of bed every day and you're like, oh, Jesus, not another day, you're in the wrong place, okay? You should totally, when you're in the right place, like I remember when I first got into the Army, I couldn't wait to get in to be with my men. And I don't mean men like possessive. I mean, a better way to say it, I couldn't wait to get around my brothers because they were my family. You know, I was a long way from home. These guys they were my family for a lot of years, right? And so I knew I was in the right place at the time. Excuse me. I'm not getting choked up. I'm having a hiccup. But anyway, got to know what motivates you. Then, next, you got to know, and here's the hard part of the conversation, YouTubers. You know, I've said some things about this recently that got me a little bit of flack. That's okay. It's because people misunderstood me. They mistook my passion for criticism. Happens all the time to us ENTJs. The thing I have to remind other personality types is that if we're taking the time out to say something about you, for those of you that have never dealt with ENTJs, you think we're cold and you think we're very critical, we care very deeply. If we've taken time out of our life to say something to you about something that you might want to change that's going to make your life better, we're not criticizing you. We're saying it because we care about you. When we criticize things that happen at work, it's because we care about the outcomes, not because we hate the organization. Even when you're in an organization where you know you don't fit, you still want to see it win. You don't want them to lose because you don't like them. But it comes across that way. It comes across as negativity. Okay? But I said some things about YouTubers where they're like, I don't know, I want to be a YouTube star, but I suck at every part of being on camera and making videos. And I'm like, well, do you just suck because, you know, this is your first time trying it? You need to develop some skill to see if you've got what it takes, right? Or is it you don't have the personality or even the motivation or the skill to be able to hold an audience? I watched a video today of a guy criticizing some guys on YouTube that I'm connected to. Some very, very, I'm not going to name any of them because I don't want to bring freaking shine to the guy that made the video or crap on my boys. But he made this very long video criticizing some guys that I'm connected to about whether their stuff is a sham or whatever. And that's not important to me. But the part that was important was I was watching his presentation. He was reading a script, which is okay, but it was clear that he was uncomfortable on camera. And so I use that as an example for your skill set. Those of you who want to be quote unquote professional YouTubers, if you don't have the skill set to be on, here's the bottom line. If you don't have a skill set that helps, because being awkward and being quirky can work. Go watch comedians like Mike Birbiglia, right? There's a subtle confidence in him, but he's clearly a quirky, kind of goofy guy. But he makes that work because he's refined it. I guarantee if you go 15 years in the past and watch one of his comedy shows back then, it was terrible. Or I'll give you an example of a guy you know. Go watch Kevin Hart's original stand-ups. They're terrible. I mean, like, not even funny. Had I been at that club, I would have walked out. And I'm not hating on the dude because I couldn't get on stage and make people laugh like he does. But his original stuff was terrible. Why? Because he needed to put in the work. So I'm not talking about people that need to develop a built-in skill. He had the skills to have stage presence, to do good storytelling, and to be funny. He just needed to refine it. Plus, he was a kid. He didn't have any stories to tell because he hadn't lived. Now he's lived a full life and can talk about all kinds of craziness, you know, with his father and he went to a sex shop and bought a thing, and he's talking about how he's walking. And, like, that's funny, right? Because we've all had awkward moments in our life that we can relate to. But he had the skills. He just needed to develop them. And what you've got to do, and I know I'm singling out the YouTubers here, but for anybody who's watching with your career, don't try to build, and this is where passion gets in the way, because some of you will be like, I'm passionate about cats. Great. It doesn't mean you need to be a cat photographer, because you may suck at photography, right? You know, I'm passionate about YouTube doesn't mean you need to be a YouTuber. And I had to learn this lesson as a musician. I loved music. I was good at coming up with musical concepts. You know, I played fairly well. I sang okay. I rapped pretty well. But at the end of the day, it wasn't where I belonged. My skill set was in leadership, and I was trying. It's like if you ever read the book Turning Pro, shouts out to Joe Soto, my mentor, for putting me onto that one. It talks about shadow careers. Music was my shadow career. It was me hiding behind, I'm really supposed to be giving a message to the world that's going to change lives and becoming the next Billy Graham, and I'm going to hide behind trying to be a rapper, right? And try to sneak the message in. And people are listening to the message when they're trying to chill out to music, right? So I was taking skills that I had and trying to apply them improperly, right? And I could have forced it to be okay, but I wasn't going to be doing shows with Justin Bieber and the Roots, man. It was not going to happen. I just didn't have the skill for that. So what you have to do is really be able to understand what your skill set is. Okay, that's the conceptual. How? Well, ask yourself some practical questions. First of all, what did your parents do? Because chances are, if you spent at least 18 years with your parents, you picked up something from them. All right? Or actually, before you get to that, start with your personality. Remember that your personality is going to predispose you to being good at certain things. Like, so when you take, if you take the test, and I recommend you do on 16personalities.com, when you take that test, your personality type is going to have a nickname. Do you find it strange that the nickname for my personality type is the commander? Maybe this kid's going to be good at leadership when he gets older, because he was doing it at the age of 4, having all his friends and putting teams together and saying, we're going to go do a thing. Yeah. Right? Now, it doesn't mean that because I'm an ENTJ, I'm just the perfect leader and I never need any coaching or training. I had years of coaching and training, from ministry to military to Fortune 500, you name it, to, you know, public and private courses that I've bought from people. But the point is that I am predisposed to being good at what I'm doing right now. So it just makes sense. Okay, let's play on that. That's a skill. Right? Then ask yourself, what did my parents do? Well, my dad was, you know, a leader of soldiers for 37 years. I might have picked up a thing or two. You know, some of my ENTJ-ness probably came from him, although some people argue it's genetic. Whatever. I really don't care. The bottom line is it's there. And I was around a dude that led people for and he didn't just lead for 30. I mean, he worked for, you know, before where he's at now, he worked for, I want to say, over 50 years. Just doing different things. I might have picked up a thing or two. I may have picked up some of my creative stuff from my mother. Pretty creative lady. Pretty loyal lady. I may have learned loyalty, right? Some of the values that we have as leaders. When you're evaluating those skills, then it's like, okay, you know what you grew up around, you know your personality type lends you to be good at certain things, right? Then what? Well, okay. What have you been doing in your life? You know, if you're not, you know, if you're 18, you may have only done maybe working at Pizza Hut or something like that. I'm not saying that to make fun of you. I worked at Burlington Coat Factory. And the one I worked at, when the trash compactor broke, the GM used to make us jump in the trash compactor to make the trash go down. So, yeah, I've been there. Not making fun of you at all. So, what have you been doing? If you're a little older, let's say you're 25 or older, you've been doing something for at least 5 years. Those skills can be put to use, right? And then you have to ask yourself, what do people that you don't know come to you and say? And what do they say about you? One of the things people say about me literally all the time is, dude, you should be making TV shows or radio. Imagine that. Because you have the voice for it. You have the charisma for it. Do I? Isn't that amazing that I'm standing here on a camera, right? And that's people who don't know. They have no incentive to give me a compliment. They're like, wow, I had a dude tell me at a dinner party at a birthday, I had just met him. I talked to him for 5 minutes. He's like, bro, you have got to get a radio show. Like the way that you present and you talk, I would just listen to you talk regardless of what you talk about. And that was something at the time that facet of my skills, I wasn't violently self-aware. I didn't know that. I hated my voice. Even I was a musician, I didn't even like my voice that much. But people are telling me, yo, brother, you got to get a radio show. And now it's podcasts, right? So yeah, remember, let's review where we are right now. We're going to get to questions here in a second. Become violently self-aware. Personality tests. What are your values? Know what motivates you. Know your skills. Because if you know your skills, you know all of these things, then you'll know what you need to pursue and where you need to pursue it. Whether it's building your own thing or going to work for a company. If your values are, I'm a vegan who's violently against, and I'm not, I'm just saying, let's say you are a vegan who's violently against the eating of animals or using animals for anything that's not letting them live in their natural habitat, you probably don't want to take a job at corporate Burger King. You feel me? And I know that's an obvious statement, but remember, none of this is complicated. So many people, part of the problem with folks when they're searching for answers is they want the 10 Commandments to come down from Mount Sinai with all this complicated stuff on it. And it's hard and weird. That's part of the problem. You're over-sciencing it. None of the solutions are hard. We just make them hard. And we want them to be complicated when they don't need to be. So the point there is I'm not sharing anything that's groundbreaking with you. But remember, Michael Jordan's coach used to make the team practice bounce passes every single day. Could you imagine being a 15-year vet in the NBA, which means you've been playing basketball for 35 years of your life, depending on, when you started? And it's just you're practicing bounce passes. Yes, because the fundamentals is where the success comes from. And it's grinding out the fundamentals over and over and over again until you become instinctual about it, and then nothing can stop your momentum. Cool. Passion. I got to this last on purpose because what I don't want anyone to do is take the simple advice, just follow your passions. Some of you are passionate about watching gaming videos on YouTube. It doesn't mean you should be making them. Some of you are very passionate about music. It doesn't mean you should be a musician. Some of you are passionate about playing basketball and you're 4'11" at age 20, meaning you're done. Right? All right? Chances you get in the NBA? No, not happening. Now, that doesn't mean that gaming and the NBA and whatever the third thing I said was couldn't be a part of your life, but they better not be your career choice because you're going to waste a lot of years of music was the other one. You're going to waste a lot of years chasing something that's not going to pan out because you're not focusing on who you are, how you are, what you are. You're not focusing on your core values. You're not keeping your motivations in your target sights like I showed you with the rifle. And you're certainly not building on your natural and your developed skills. I don't care how sweet your crossover is. You're 4'11", you're not coming in the paint against LeBron. It's not going down. Okay, but what I will say is once you have all this stuff figured out, then you can start to look at what passions do I have that fit this. I'm very passionate about destroying fear in people's lives, about destroying suffering, about getting people out of this and into a place where they can start to see some level of success. I've been developing leaders for a long time in my life. It's something that I'm uniquely good at. It doesn't mean I don't struggle. It doesn't mean that I'm perfect. It doesn't mean that I don't have flaws because I have plenty that I have to work on. I have character defects I have to work on every single day. Okay? I have not arrived. I've just experienced some things that I can pass on and have been passing on for a long time. That's helped some people. I'm violently passionate about that. Remember, violently self-aware. I'm also violently passionate about I hate to see people live in fear and suffering. Why? Because I did. And I know how much of a killer of your life that is. And I don't want anybody to have to struggle with that. And if I can do anything to help you, I'm going to do it. Period. That passion makes sense. All right? So it's not, when you read the book, So Good They Can't Ignore You, you may be misled to believe that passion is just completely off the table. It's not. The argument of the book is your passion comes from all of this. What most people try to do is they try to assess their passion before they have any of this figured out. And you can't. Ask my son what he's passionate about. my little dude, he doesn't know. He plays Minecraft and Roblox and fidget spinners, and he likes to draw pictures, but he hasn't done it for a long enough to develop a passion for it. Most people think passion is just something that happens in you. It's not. It's something that develops over time as you develop all of this. Then your passion will emerge. Steve Jobs, perfect example. That dude wasn't passionate about technology. He's passionate about Western philosophy and history and dance. And then passionate about being a hippie. And then it was like, maybe we should start a company because we need money. And then you realize, oh, I'm good at this sales thing. I'm also really good at design. Then he became violently passionate about sales and design. Imagine that. Okay? So don't lead with your passion. Your passion should not be discounted. I think I scared a lot of people when I made that video that don't follow your passion. Again, clickbaity a little bit because you got to get people's attention in the modern world. But clickbaity for good. I'm cool with clickbait if it's helping people. Okay? So, know thyself. Violently self-aware. Personality test. Your values. Knowing what motivates you and keeping it right in the sights of your rifle. Okay? Understanding your core values. Understanding your skills. If you don't have any skills, if you're 14 years old, you may not have developed a ton of skill yet. It's okay. You got a lot of years left on this earth. Okay? So you needing to have all your passions and everything figured out at 14? Maybe not. All right? Spend some time. Learn yourself. Take some personality tests. Try some things. See what sticks. Because your skills may surprise you. I didn't think I was a good leader by the time I showed up at college as a young cadet who was 17. His dad actually had to sign his paperwork because I was too young. I didn't know my potential. I didn't know my potential until I was 19, and I had my first sergeant sit me down and cuss me the hell out. And he's like, you want to be the class clown? Fine. That's not who you are. You may be a funny guy, but you're being the class clown because you're afraid to be who you really are, which is a person who could lead and help a lot of people if you would just stop being an idiot for 5 seconds. I never forget. Now, what he said to me was actually nicer than that, but that's what he was saying, and he kicked me square in my behind, and I needed every word of that because him taking that one part out of his life to give me something to show me that I was living a shadow life. That I was like, I'm just going to be the funny guy who's cool with everybody. That's me, yo, because I'm insecure. And I'm afraid to lead. Even though I think I can do it, I'm afraid to do it because I don't want to fail. How many of you are afraid to fail? And that's why you're not doing the thing that you know because you don't need me to tell you what your passion is. It's in here, man. You know, what is that one thing you would get up every single day for the rest of your life? If you could do one thing, what would it be? And you know what it is. If you're younger, you might not know yet. That's cool. You'll figure it out, though. Because it'll hit you as you experience life. All right? So those are the things we need to think about. With that said, I'm going to shut up because I went long. I always do. And I'm going to get into some comments and questions here. Let me scroll because I've seen a ton of comments come in while I was talking. So forgive me, I wasn't ignoring any of you. I wanted to get through the discussion before I got to questions so we wouldn't get too derailed. But let's see if I can get through all of the questions here. All right, lots of convo. I love it. I love how you guys and ladies interact here. It's so dope. All right. Sean says, I deal with warfare every day where I work, violent and unstable clients, but I love my job nonetheless. Cool. So something to think about is, does your job exist somewhere where you can get the best of both worlds, where you can get better clients and still be able to do a thing that you love? So you got half of the equation, or maybe you like the warfare. I don't know. You know, if you enjoy it, then rock on. But there's always a way to make both of those things work with enough ingenuity. Let's see, what else? Polite Canuck says, evening. Long time no see, Polite Canuck. It's good to see you, my friend. All right. Let's see. Jordan says, what is your opinion on an introvert being a social worker? I think that I would do well with that, but sometimes I feel like I might get too drained. And that's a great question. I don't know enough about you to really answer that question. In general, see if I can get us some more light. I think we're done with the whiteboard. If I add anything after the fact, I'll go back over there. In general, I think it would be okay. but it's you have to do a self-assessment there. Like and the thing you guys and ladies are going to hear from me a lot is my opinion means jack. My opinion is irrelevant in most cases. So I can give you thoughts and ideas, but at the end of the day, you have to make the determination. You have to become violently self-aware and understand, as an introvert, can you handle the load that you're going to get, the emotional load that you're going to get? And so what I would do in your shoes is, instead of looking for an opinion, go test it. Go volunteer at Big Brothers, Big Sisters. Go volunteer in homeless shelters and interact with a lot of people that have issues like that, and just see what happens. If you can hack it and get through it, then you'll have your answer. Always be experimenting. Juliana says, I found your channel wanting to learn more about my ENTJ female friend. I am so very thankful I found your channel, and I am thankful as well. Thank you for your kind words. Let's see. Jordan says, I'm very passionate about helping people, and I am a natural empath. But because I'm an empath, I feel like all the feelings of others might drain me. So yes, I think the simple truth is it's certainly going to drain you. It's just, can you handle the load? And I would experiment. So instead of trying to figure it out before you try. And so, like, I don't know if it's a famous quote or not, but it's like, don't try to be God. Don't try to play God and predict what's going to happen. Go experiment and let God speak to you through the results. All right? Let's see. I do social work, and I believe that if you are called to that field, you will flourish, even if it's not all rainbows and unicorns. My man. All right. And see, one of the things I love about my audience, and I gotta give you all props for this. My audience is literally answering the questions other people are asking. So if you guys could understand how much that actually means to me, because when I got started, when I got started on the internet, not YouTube, okay, I started my first web social community back in 2003, maybe 2004. I've been at this a while, okay, off and on. And one of the things I always wanted when I created a community was a place where we actually had conversation. YouTube has always made that hard, but my audience, God love every one of you, you overcome it every time. So everyone right now, pat yourselves on the back. I'm so thankful to have you, and I truly mean it from the bottom of my heart. I'm not being patronizing or even blowing smoke. I'm being dead serious, so thank you. All right, Pascal says, I want so badly to work in the video game industry or in animation. It's a medium that unlocks the imaginary work and releases it into reality. This is a dream job for an INFP like me. Okay, so now it's time to evaluate whether or not you have the skills. And the cool part is, you don't have to be pigeonholed into being an animator. There's so many things. Like, something I think an INFP would be amazing at, especially because you're introverted, is being a game designer. And what people misunderstand is they think game design is game development, and they're two different things. And I'm probably saying something Pascal already knows, but for someone who may watch this who doesn't know, your development folks are the ones doing, stuff like my background, the computer science piece of it. Your designers are the ones who are understanding the philosophy, the rules of the game, the world. You are literally creating the reality that someone's going to experience as the game designer. I think that might suit you even better than animation, my friend. Think about it. But again, my opinion matters for Jack. It all comes down to what you think and what you believe you're capable of. Raven says, what you would also need, okay, she's answered a question. Excellent. Well, you guys are really chatting it up. I love it, man. I don't even have to answer the questions because you guys answered them all. Juliana says, ENTJ are like the ideal female personality. That is why my ENTJ friend said, because she is an ENTJ, is quite arrogant. We can certainly come across as arrogant. I think I'm the type of person that thinks intent is everything, and ENTJs never intend to be arrogant. We just come across as such because we have a lot of confidence. Because an ENTJ is going to beat themselves into being good at something, so that confidence gets developed because the confidence is a result of the competence. All right, the Mad Hatter says, LOL, when he said your type will predispose you, he was going to say failure. All right, funny dude. All right, what do we got? Mr. Steven says, hello there. I have an overdue apology to Alloy 7. What's the apology for? I don't recall being wronged, but if there's something you feel you need to apologize for, I'm all ears. You will certainly be forgiven for whatever it was, I'm sure. What else do we have? Vivian showed up. Hey, Viv, thanks for coming. Totally agree. Would listen to your voice for hours and have. Okay, so I'm glad I didn't just pull that out of nowhere. There's some of it. Vivian actually agrees with my friend at the birthday party dinner table. The footy coach says hi. Is the footy coach a soccer coach? Is that what that means? Sean says, I worked at Burlington Coat Factory for one day on the packing line. Yep, that's where I worked in receiving. They fired him that day. By the way, you're a baller. The footy coach says, I'm qualified. Oh, and then he answered my question right there in the next line. He is a soccer coach. Excellent. Jordan says, what do you do specifically in the social... Oh, he's talking to Sean. Dolce Gabbana says, hello. Hello, Dolce, if you're still here. Hello. Actually, let's get a little more intimate here, shall we? We're pretty much done with the whiteboard. So let's get cozy, shall we? All right, let me make sure I'm actually in the shot here so we're not going crazy and you're not having to look at all my computer cords in the background in my messy office. Like, it's hilarious. My entire storage room is in my office. Like, if you could see what was behind me, there's a freaking pandemonium in here. You could barely walk. And by the way, I have a blazer and a shirt on. I am wearing, actually, I can show you. Just so you guys know what's really going on. But I love authenticity. And I just did a video on it, so I'm going to go hard. This is what the shoes I have on are. And I'm wearing basketball shorts with this blazer and shirt. So it's like it's business up top. It's party down low, yo. Just so you know. So I'm keeping it real with you guys. I'm not in here wearing a suit. Let's see. Pascal says, what motivates me is using things in the external world to create the ideas in my head, out of my head. It's what wakes me up in the morning. Cool. Raven says, I want to have a job that I can love and get really good at something. Because, you know, who among us ever loves anything that we're not good at? Like when I tried salsa dancing for the first time, I hated it because I sucked at it. Because that stutter step on the 2 beat, like I'm used to playing in bands where everything we play is a freaking 4/4 beat. So everything is on the 2 and 4, right? And now I'm doing these weird stutter steps on the 1 and the 3. It's like, But as I kept doing it, it got easier and I liked it more. So develop deep domain expertise. But again, in a place that suits your personality, suits your values, and suits your skills. All right, don't try to force yourself into liking something you're never going to like, because it's just not going to work. Uh-oh. See, this is the thing I hate that YouTube does. It'll jump down and make me miss comments. So if I miss your comment, just repost it. It's YouTube being silly. Let's see. Daniel Lagos says, I'll read this 2 books that you mentioned. I know I'll find something cool there as well. Sean says, Bryant, I don't enjoy the actual warfare, but I really believe that what I do is a calling, and I have power over those demons. Right. And so now that I know you're a social worker, I get what you mean by clients. So rock on, dude. I think you're out there doing God's work. So if you're getting up every morning, tap dancing to work, keep doing it. I was literally clutching my phone when he said I should do game design. Holy cow, he spoke straight to my heart. He has no idea how much that advice just meant. Hey, man, that's what we're here for. Footy coach says, I love my job. I'm a football coach or soccer Have you called I a passionate and learned the skills I needed when I qualified since my retirement due to injury. It's so funny. One of my closest friends used to be a neighbor of mine in a previous house that I owned. And he was the same way. Like I think he was probably good enough to play at the professional level if he had kept going, but he got injured. And then he became a minor league coach, and he had his own team, and it was awesome watching him. And he went through some hurt in that regard. There's some things in life happens, but it was so cool to watch him living that dream as a coach, man, after having become injured. So I can relate to your story through a friend of mine. I've not been through a similar situation other than I just wanted to play pro football and I got derailed into the Army. George says, Bryant, I know you say that your opinion doesn't mean anything, but I think the great majority here trust your opinion. You have earned our respect, even if we don't know you personally. And I totally respect that. I appreciate that. The reason I specifically say that my opinion doesn't matter, I'm not saying that my opinion isn't valuable, because I think you can listen to it and take something from it. But I want you to know that at the end of the day, my opinion is not going to necessarily, depending on the circumstance, get you closer to your goal. For example, if my opinion is, let me pick a thing that I have an opinion about. As opinionated as I am, I can't find an opinion. So I think Final Fantasy 12 is the best Final Fantasy game that was ever made. Well, that's not necessarily, if you love 7 and you hate 12, what I don't want to have happen because you trust me is now I have to love 12. Like, because I trust this guy and he knows things, now I need to adopt his opinion, because my opinion may not be what works for you. You see what I mean? So I'm trying to make some, I'll give you my opinion if you ask for it, and I'll give you some input, but I always want you to bring it in with a grain of salt, because at the end of the day, the way I do business may not work. So here's a perfect example. On YouTube, I do not monetize my videos anymore. Now, I know some of my older channels' videos are still monetized because it's legacy with my network that I was on, and I haven't gone through and unmonetized all 1,000 videos that are there. But as far as the content that I'm producing today, none of it's monetized, and it's on purpose, because my opinion is, if what I'm telling people in my video is, I'm going to give you all of this free content, so that if you never could afford to pay me for the stuff that I charge for, who cares? I'm going to give you the stuff, right? Here it is. Now go out there and execute. That's my opinion. Don't call stuff free if I have to make somebody watch an ad. But if AdSense is feeding your kid, if you're so good on YouTube, right? I've helped people grow their channels way bigger than mine, because they make a type of content that a lot more people are looking for than the folks that I've chosen to serve, right? So, at least for today, if they are feeding their children and their wives off of their content, monetize it. My opinion shouldn't be taken as gospel, is what I'm saying. Okay? My opinion should never... So it's not that my opinion doesn't matter. A better way to say it is, never take my opinion as gospel. Just don't do it. Take it and then process it against what you think. And don't allow me to influence you if you know you need to go in a different direction. All right? I don't ever want to be responsible for leading someone in a path that they listen to me instead of listening to your inner compass. And then, going back to understanding you've got to know you're going to know you better than I ever will. Okay. I find INFP men incredibly attractive. I am a female INTJ or ENTJ. Excellent. Hello, Dolce. Sean says, do a mixtape. I already put out an album, bro, and it's no longer on the internet, and I have no plans to ever put it back on the internet ever. So I kind of did have a mixtape back in 2010. I think is when that happened. 2011 maybe. I think might have been when I launched it. Let's see. Football coach says, footy coach says, do you have any advice on how to improve my content on my YouTube? Sorry to change subject. No, this is the subject. So how do you improve the content on your YouTube channel? Well, first of all, you got to understand what YouTube wants. And YouTube wants to connect with people who tell interesting stories. So one of the reasons why gaming works so much is because a lot of times it's very story driven, or the person who's playing the game is constantly narrating a story about their life or something they experienced, telling jokes. Music is highly popular on YouTube. And when you look at the ingredients that make the videos that get 1 billion views, a billion views, then just reverse engineer what's happening there. Like when you look at Gangnam Style, what about that video made, what is it, 3 billion people I think have watched that video at this point, or 2 billion? What made that happen? Well, there's a couple things we can look at. One, it's very colorful. The scenes change very often, so this is very technical stuff. The scenes don't stay on any particular shot for an extended period of time. All right, they're moving, constantly moving. That's raising the dopamine levels in your brain. Remember that, okay? And that's important because people come to YouTube to raise the dopamine levels in their brain. That's why we watch TV. That's why we watch sports. Okay, it's like a drug. And it does the same thing that drugs do, just to different, at different levels of intensity, obviously. So the song is absolutely catchy. It follows the principles of pop song making, which I think is 4 chords. I'm trying to think. Open Gangnam Style. It might even just be 2 chords instead of 4 because I'm trying to remember the beat. But the point is, it relies on a lot of principles that make music catchy, and the beat is percussive and heavy, and it's people dance at their wedding to the song. So there's a lot of elements there that are going to make people want to be a part of what's going on there. And Psy is just silly, like when he's doing the dance battle with his weird, stripper pole dance at the guy with the Ferrari or whatever. Like, it's just silly to watch. So you look at things like that. You look at things like PewDiePie, who's just outlandish. So PewDiePie operates a lot like the principles of reality TV, which is, what is this clown going to do next? And I'm not saying clown to disparage him for Felix's sake, but it's, what in the world is this guy going to do next? And that's why people keep coming back. So garnering an emotional response from your videos is absolutely necessary, right? And you could do that in a lot of different ways. I do it by giving people inspiring information. He does it by being funny or being outlandish and crazy. Psy does it by making people happy with a catchy, fun song. So that's, to make your content better, you got to become a great storyteller. If you're not one, get someone that is. Maybe you can be the producer instead of the talent. But those are kind of the principles that you have to think about that people really connect with in videos. All right, Raven says, it's your advice, not your instruction. Good call, Raven. Thank you. Dolce Gabbana says, you don't get fed up with INFP men. Let's see. Sean says, Bryant, do you do group meetups? I'm getting ready to start doing a meetup for my consultancy, for my agency, basically. I don't, at this point, do meetups for this type of stuff. I'm about to start doing meetups with entrepreneurs somewhere, hopefully within the next, I'm hoping to start that in June, where basically I'm going to put all of the small to medium businesses who will attend into a room and teach them everything I know about social media completely for free. And it's just my way of giving back to my local community and just saying, hey, I know a lot of you are trying to learn social media. I audit and look at a lot of companies every single day as I'm looking for new clients. And, a lot of them just don't know. Like, matter of fact, I'll give you an example. I sent out some correspondence to Gold's Gym because the same thing I say about Sony, like iTunes should not exist except Sony should own it. Facebook should not exist except Google should own Facebook, by the way. The minute Mark launched that thing, Google should have bought it. The same way Mark is buying up everything now, from Instagram to WhatsApp, and he tried to buy Snapchat and then they wouldn't sell, so he just made a Snapchat. Google's been behind the curve, right? Well, I look at Gold's Gym and how they do YouTube. There's no reason why Elliot Hulse and Jeff Cavalier should be destroying Gold's Gym. Gold's Gym is an international brand. But the problem is, what Elliot Hulse and Jeff Cavalier know that Gold's Gym doesn't know is that people don't want to watch commercials for your business. And too many big businesses shoot videos like commercials or like infomercials, instead of it just being me with no shirt on standing here in a camera telling you some philosophical thing about making yourself. And I'm not, Elliot is awesome, by the way. I'm not saying that to be making fun of him. I think Elliot is dope. I've learned a lot from watching him. But the point is, I sent them a message like, yo, this shouldn't be happening. You are an internationally recognized brand. Everybody should be coming to you to get this advice, right? But they're doing some things wrong. So I was just like, hey, I would like to help. So that's what I'm going to be doing for the local businesses in my area, because I've spent so much time on YouTube. I understand it. Now I've spent a lot of time growing a Facebook page, and now I understand the inner workings of Facebook. I understand that organic search on Facebook is dead. So on Facebook, I've got to pay to promote, but there's a right way to do it, right? And there's things that I have to do to make it work to get the residual followership. Same thing with Instagram. Instagram, for example, is a bot game, right? You got to get 10 followers to get one. And it's just the way it is. You're going to get a ton of, when you do it right, a ton of people are going to follow you, and then 90% of them are going to unfollow you. And you're going to keep the ones who are actually there for real, because everybody thinks it's a good idea to use follow bots, as if having a big number, because what people have figured out on Instagram is if I can get to 1 million followers, I can get somebody, some brand to pay me money to do a shout out. But the brands, if they haven't already, are going to start figuring out that just because your channel is big, now it's gotten to the point where brands are like, let us look at the medium tier people, because these people with the huge channels are artificially growing with people who aren't even paying attention to them. It's just bots all messaging each other, right? And so I'm not in the bot game. I refuse to get in the bot game because I don't, not to say that I don't use automation tools, but the stuff that's being posted is the stuff that I have chosen to be posted, if that makes sense. But on Instagram, it's me. It's Facebook and Instagram for my personal stuff is 100% me, right? So I'm going to be doing meetups with the small to medium businesses in my area to just teach them all that. Like, here's everything I know, and helping them understand, like, for your company, you probably don't need to use YouTube because there's not going to be a whole lot of value in, you know, your hardware store making videos unless there's something interesting that you can do with that. But you should be on Facebook, and you should be doing SEO, for example. So that's the meetup stuff I'm going to be doing here in the near future. I will, at some point, I will be creating, possibly, this is a pipe dream. That's why I don't really talk about it a lot, because I'm not sure how it will play out. But I want to start something called the iChurch, which is, I just think a lot of what we understand about church today, about going to a building, I think there's value in that. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. You know, there's still churches that I'm a part of, and will visit with some regularity, but I just think everything's moving online, and nobody's really killing that space yet the way it should be getting really handled for spiritual guidance. So that's one of the things I'll be doing online, hopefully, and that'll be down the road once I've got a lot of the infrastructure for my company and a lot of the other products that I'm working on fully set up. George says, this is a good point, Bryant. I try not to take anyone's opinion as fact, but use it to guide me in a direction. Yeah, and I know you do, Jordan. I'm usually careful. I understand, like Joyce Meyer teaches, the number of people I can help is the exact number of people I can hurt, and I don't take that for granted. I never want to be responsible for, well, I would take responsibility, but I never want to be the one that causes someone hurt because I said something and they took it as gospel. So it's not necessarily directed at you, it's directed at someone who may be listening who's totally lost, and then they're grabbing onto the things that I'm saying because they make a lot of sense, but they may be doing it to their own detriment. So I want them to be able to think for themselves. I'm not into brainwashing people into believing what I believe. Half the stuff I believe, I don't know if I'll believe it in 10 to 15 years. You know? Anyway, Dolce Gabbana says, no, I respect and understand them. I also, she's talking to Pascal. Play Canuck says, oh, come on, YouTube, stop skipping forward. Any suggestion on self-evaluation is something I've always had issues with, to the chagrin of my wife some days. So a lot of what we talked about tonight was that. Can you make that question more specific? Like, what didn't I cover that you'd like help with self-evaluation on? Can you be more specific? Maybe I can speak to it. Pascal says, okay, he's still talking to Dolce. Vivian says, same as Play Canuck, though for me, self-evaluation happens a bit too often and ends up with me beating myself up. So this is a great point with Vivian. Did you notice during our whole talk, for those of you that were here for the whole time, at no point did I write on the board? So let's look at the board one more time here. Do you see what's not on this board, folks? And it's not up there on purpose. You do not see this word. Well, you're going to see it now because I'm going to write it. Nowhere on the board did I write you need to be violently self-aware with your weaknesses. Now, I think you should be aware of your weaknesses, not to say that, but I want you to be aware of your weaknesses simply for decision-making purposes, not for, get my camera stand to act right here so we're not all crooked. I don't want you to have to spend a whole lot of time self-evaluating your weaknesses and then trying to address your weaknesses, unless it's something that, there's certain weaknesses we have to address, certain character flaws we have to address. But I use the Pareto principle. It's 80-20. So 80% of your goodness is going to come from 20% of your efforts. So I focus 80% of my life on focusing on the stuff I am a freaking ninja at. I'm just good. And so I spend 80% of my time there. I spend 10 to maybe 20% of my time evaluating weakness and either trying to get rid of it or, for Vivian's sake, accepting it. Like, you're going to have flaws. You're going to have weaknesses. You're going to have things that you're just not good at. No matter how hard you try to fix it, like, I'm never going to be good at, I don't ever want to say never, because it's always going to be a struggle. Let's say this. It's always going to be a struggle for me to deal with bureaucrats, because they drive me insane. You're talking about people who are the most inefficient people on the planet. For an ENTJ to have to deal with people who can't make a decision because we're trying to decide the difference between periods and semicolons. Like, the ship is sinking and we're trying to figure out if the report we're writing is going to have a period or a semicolon. Like, I'm probably never going to be polite to the person. Or the example I gave in the beginning story where I was talking about the person, the supreme director of this organization who was talking about, I want your team to come up with a solution for how to make these pictures on the wall prettier, when our mission had nothing to do with that. I'm never, so let me put it this way. It's not that I can never be polite to that person, or because I'm polite and I'm respectful. I'm never going to like that person. Just not. Because I'm never going to respect you. Not as a leader. I mean, you may be a humanitarian that does great work outside it, but I'm never going to respect you because, in my opinion, you can't lead ants to a picnic if that's the way you approach things. And I refuse to align myself with people who I think can't. I am a good leader. And if you put me with people who suck at it, I'm going to come across as a jerk, because I'm highly impatient with having to be with a director or a person. This was years ago, but it's like, if I gotta be with this person, I wouldn't follow this person to a bake sale, let alone follow him into a firefight. Are you kidding me? I've worked with some of the world's best leaders ever and been trained by them. I'm never gonna be like, oh, I'm so happy to deal with this person who doesn't know how to spell leadership. That's not gonna change. So is that a character flaw? Yes, because I should be able to discipline myself to say, they are who they are. I just need to accept who they are. It shouldn't really anger me, and it doesn't anger me. And I can adjust myself to a certain degree to where I can still operate, still show this person respect, be forthright when I need to be, and what I mean is be direct and be honest and authentic when I need to be. But I also have to learn how to shut my mouth. But guess what? My strongest function is as an ENTJ, extroverted thinking. That means I blurt. No matter how much I try to force blurting it back into my chest, I'm never going to be amazing at it. I can adjust it so I'm good enough to navigate boardrooms and discussions and negotiations. But I'm not going to be the guy that's the amazing, just sit on the couch and listen for 7 hours without interjecting. Okay, and so going back to my example, just to throw another one at you, I'm never going to be an amazing accountant. You could literally train me for another 10,000 hours. I'd be mediocre. So I have to accept that that's not going to be a good thing. And then there's two things. Once I accept it, there is no beating myself up. I am not designed, regardless of what you believe, I don't believe God created me to be good at everything. I believe he made me the way I am because my impatience will drive change in the places where people want change to happen. That's why, going back to values, I had to tell people, like, if you're in a place that you're doing this all the time, go. Because you aren't necessarily, the reason why you're frustrated is not just your fault. It's because you're trying to fit yourself into a place where you don't belong. Right? And so if you're trying to beat yourself into a thing that you're just never going to be, stop it. Be okay with the fact that you're just I'm never going to find politics useful. Just not. More efficient ways to handle collective problems, I believe. And I think that starts with self-governance. I don't need a homeowners association to tell me when to paint my door. Go jump off a cliff. Right? I don't need bureaucratic systems that take money from us to make sure your house value still. I'm good. Thank you. Right? I'm never going to be the person that agrees with that. So trying to make myself agree with those people and hang out with those people would be a nightmare. So you have to accept the things that you're just not going to be great at. You have to accept the things that, like if you're having habitual failure, maybe that failure is there to teach you, maybe this isn't the thing, right? And beating yourself up, it does nothing for you. When you make a mistake and you realize a weakness or you have a failure, it's, professional athletes and elite soldiers have this in their minds. It's when a mistake is made, you don't have time, if you've made a mistake in a high stress situation, to be like, oh man, I can't believe I did. No, I got to get focused, because if I stay in this place, I'm going to either make more mistakes or cause problems for other people. Just like in the NFL, if a quarterback throws an interception, the coach will be like, shake it off, forget it, get it out of your head. Next play. Don't think about it again. Stop beating yourself up, because the beating yourself up doesn't have a good end game. It's not going to help you in any way. It's a false sense of humility that you think you need to punish yourself for not being able to be something that you weren't created to be in the first place. Right? It's trying to play God. It's I need to punish myself because no. Why? Nobody's judging you. So beating yourself up is absolutely, and I get that some of that's tied to, it could be how we're raised. I did it for years, right? Like when people send me criticism, like, I hope this doesn't offend you. I'm like, are you kidding me? Nobody's harder on me, my products, my services, my coaching, my anything than I am. What you're saying is way nicer than what I hear in my mind, but I know how to silence this or this with this and stay focused on the goal. Okay? So definitely do not beat yourself up. When you're doing a self-evaluation, evaluate your strengths, do that 80% of the time. Find your weaknesses, weed out the ones that will harm you, and forget about the rest. Don't spend a lot of time trying to fix the thing that you're not good at. Let's see. So Sean Prater says, do you believe that faith and worldly ambition are mutually exclusive? How do you incorporate beliefs and real world? No, absolutely not mutually exclusive. Why would God give Joseph a vision of being the freaking second in command of an empire? Why would he promote Solomon to be one of the wisest kings that's ever lived? Why would he promote David, his father, to do the same thing? No. I mean, why would Jesus happen if world self-ambition, and not just, obviously with the story of Jesus is a very selfless story, but it still has a lot of sensational things that happen that would take a person who has for him to, when they remark about Jesus, and I'm not sure what faith you are, but I'm just using the one that I'm very familiar with. When you look at the story of Christ, one of the things they used to say about him is, wow, he's so learned in the scriptures. That took self-ambition. He had to be ambition doesn't cancel out faith. I would say, because faith without works is dead. In order to get works done, there has to be ambition. So what I think is worldly, if we want to call them that, ambitions can get in the way of our faith when we don't prioritize correctly, when we start chasing things that don't have an end goal that's beneficial to anybody, right? Like it's just a selfish aim. Like I want a Lamborghini just so I can drive it around my neighborhood loudly so everyone can see how awesome I am. That's where it's like, okay, dude, you're a jerk. Like you're not, you see what I mean? Like you can take it to an extreme, and I think it doesn't become mutually exclusive. It just becomes kind of silly. But no, I don't think that someone, having an ambition, like Abraham Lincoln had some pretty high ambitions and failed a lot of times at trying to become president, and eventually did. And then he was the leader who was necessary to take us through one of the darkest points of American history. So, and like him or love him for the good or the bad he may have done. There's always two sides of the story. But yeah, no, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. Polite Canuck says, I know what my skills are. I just have issues figuring out how to apply them. Right now, I just seem to float around doing the same dead-end work. So you know your skills. Now we have to start incorporating your motivations and your values and your personality, right? So instead of looking for a place to go work to get a check, look to go work at a place that's doing work that you believe in. You see what I mean? Like that, I can't believe how many people I talk to who just go on LinkedIn or wherever they search for their jobs and they just start looking at salaries and, oh, they need a computer programmer. But wait a minute, what does this company do? Like, this may be the Clubbing Baby Seals organization and you're an animal rights activist. Like, I use extreme examples all the time to make my points. I know that's ridiculous, but the point is, find the place that shares your values. So when you're doing your self-evaluation, ask yourself not just what your skills are, because that's cool. Like if you've identified your skills, you've won a large portion of the battle. Now it's how do I want to apply these skills? And that goes back to the passion piece. What is the thing in the world that I want to see happen? Whether big or small, doesn't have to be. Like me, I have great ambitions to reach millions of people so that I can bring these types of messages to say, look, life doesn't have to suck as bad as you think it does in your mind. First of all, it doesn't suck. Especially if you're watching YouTube, your life's probably pretty decent compared to some of the places I've been in the world. But what is the thing that you want to accomplish, right? In the world, what is the thing you want to see? Do your skills map to that thing? Cool. Then go find a place that's doing it and lend your skills to them, or go build something yourself. Okay, so the dead end thing is because you may have your motivations out of whack. When I talked about the motivations, you may be chasing money when you should be chasing freedom and purpose. And then the money, I'm telling you, the money will show up when you're in the right place. So many people are like, I got to get a job that makes this much money. Why? Like, especially if you're young and fresh out of college. Well, because I have student loan debt. Okay, defer it. Or get a job that helps you to pay it little by little, but you don't have to live in a 6-bedroom apartment, with a Range Rover. I just showed you a video last week if you watch the channel regularly. And please, guys and ladies, do not, I know you're here for the personality type stuff. That's just one piece. Don't skip my daily vlogs. Not for my sake. I don't monetize this stuff. There's no kickbacks coming to me because more people watch the videos. They're there for you. Don't skip the daily Bravo vlogs. That is me telling you, basically documenting my entire life from the past to now and what's happening now, so you can see, like, the questions you're asking me, I'm documenting that in the vlog. So you don't have to listen to everything I say. Look at what I'm doing. Listen to what I'm talking about doing, because it's the answer to your question, right? If you're bouncing from dead end place to dead end place, it's because you're chasing something that's not in line with your motivations. Clearly, when you say you're going from dead end thing to dead end thing, immediately I think, okay, there's two things that motivate you, and it's mastery and it's freedom. And we need to figure out which one's more important, and then you need to go find a place that meshes your ability to have those things and allows you to live your values, right? Like Wikipedia, from what little I know about it, is a place where I might have been able to work because of their whole, we're going to keep it free, just donations. In fact, I'm actually very heavily considering, and I think I'm going to, with my marriage program, I'm not sure if we're going to do refunds, but basically resetting it so that it's like, instead of it's going to cost you this much, it's here it is, pay what you want. You want to give $1? Cool. Let's go. Like, instead of making it this rigid, you have to pay this much, because I know how much that stuff's worth. I know how much I can make selling it as a packaged product, right? But then I'd have to market it to people who make 6 and 7 figures a year to be able to afford something like that. But that's not what I want to do. But anyway, the reason why I'm bringing that up is my values are giving as much value as I possibly can. Not starving my family in the process, but giving as much as I can. So you need to figure out what your values are. That's where I would start my self-evaluation for you. And then Polite Canuck goes on to say, I don't know how to realign my skills into something useful and better for me. Well, do you need to realign your skills? I guess I don't really understand what you mean by realign your skills. Like, you talking about learning new skills or just taking the skills you have and applying them to another profession? Dolce says, my name is Jocelyn, by the way. Okay, Jocelyn. And please let me know if I pronounced Jocelyn correctly. Don't want to mispronounce people's names. Glitto Sawazaki says, is daytime where Brian is? No, it is nighttime. It is very much nighttime. Raven says, oh, come on, YouTube. Stop skipping ahead. It just skipped like 40 comments. Come on, YouTube. Sean says, how can I, as an INFJ, develop TE specifically? Saying what I think without appearing to be an a-hole. Sometimes I come across that way on my job. So I don't have the cognitive functions in front of me. Unfortunately, I don't have them all memorized. Is TE one of your cognitive functions? Because really, when I talk about developing a cognitive function, it's really more about developing behavior. So because I know I'm a TE, a lot of times I practice shutting up. And it's not that I'm developing FE, it's that I'm behaving like an FE. Because I know that that's going to get me to an end state. So from what you're saying, it's just practicing confrontation and communication, which is like I gave a friend of mine who was dealing with a really hard person that she wanted to square away, but she's like, I'm going to be a jerk. And I just gave her, here's an easy way to say it without being a jerk. You say, here's the thing that you did. Here's how it made me feel or what it made me think. And I would appreciate it if you didn't do that anymore. Totally polite. And it takes all the blame out of it. It just says, look, you're doing a thing. That's fact. You did this. When you did it, I felt like this. So instead of saying, you meant to hurt me, or like when people, you cut me off in traffic because you were trying to be a jerk. No, they didn't. They weren't thinking about you. And so when you attack somebody that way, you're attacking their intent, which is bad. But what you say is, you did a thing, factual, and when you did it, I am now responsible for how I feel. I felt this way, regardless of your intent, regardless of what you were trying to do. This is how it made me feel. It made me feel uncomfortable. So I'd really appreciate it if you didn't do it anymore. And their response, unless they're a psychopath, is going to be, oh, I'm so sorry. What I meant when I did that was this. But I'll be sure to either make that clear or not do it again. Then no one's an a-hole. Everyone goes away happy because you didn't go at the person. You went at the action and then took responsibility for how you felt about it. That's one example of how to do it. Vivian says, thank you, Bryant. That was very helpful for steering me away from over-focusing on certain weaknesses. It's not productive. Nobody has to do a whole lot of soul-searching to know their weaknesses. They're in our faces every day. Unfortunately, our world, especially our school system, it's built to make us focus. This is bad. No, I don't need to spend any time learning how to sew a bag in home economics. I'm not going into sewing or any type of work like that. No, like I'm not going to work on cars. I'm not going to be good at that. So I don't need to beat myself up because I'm not good at a thing. What I need to do is praise myself and encourage and motivate myself to spend more time doing the stuff I'm great at. So excellent. I'm glad that helped. Raven says, has feed gone down for anyone? Not for me, but it's possible. La Bruhala says, it's 4 a.m. and I'm here watching Bryant. God bless you. Let's see. California is where Jocelyn is. It's back up. Yeah, YouTube. So when I'm scrolling through the comments, YouTube will jump down like 10 of them. So I'm missing stuff here. All right. So I may have missed one of your comments or questions. If I skip over you, it's not personal. It's YouTube. Just repost it. There's no spam here. If you post something that you posted before, none of my moderators are going to come hunt you down. They know how it works. So don't feel like you're doing something bad if you have to repost. LeBrew says, Bryant, what exactly would you say is the perfect couple MBTI type for you as an ENTJ? And don't say ESFJ because you already have it. I already have it. No, my wife's an ENFJ, not an ESFJ, if that's what you meant. Okay, so I've said this a couple times in other videos. This is why you guys and ladies should not skip my daily blogs and vlogs, rather. But this bears repeating, and I think for those of you that don't watch me every day, this is a very, very good question, and I'm glad you asked it. I do not believe, and this is me, this is getting into opinion, I don't believe that there is a perfect type match. I think there are types that, if you were to observe them over time, are wired to get along better than others. But I would argue that the problem with trying to get the perfect MBTI match is that we're not looking into the deeper issue, is that there are personality conflicts, but where personality conflicts turn into strife, contention, and resentment is where one or both parties are unwilling to do a couple of things. One, get rid of their own insecurities. Eradicate them. Two, be accepting of the fact that the person who you are sharing this time and energy and oxygen with is a different person than you are. And no matter how much you may want them to be a certain way, that ain't happening. Acceptance. 3, empathy, allowing them to be who they are, accepting who they are, and loving them, right? And I don't mean love like in the feelings, oh, I love you. No, like treating them with respect, dignity, honor, and selflessness, despite the fact that there is no perfect match for you. Okay, and so you have to exercise this level of acceptance and, at the end of the day, tolerance. I can't tell you, being on the internet, how much I have to deal with people who just need to take their freaking Pampers off and grow up. Like, you can't stand the fact, and this isn't just in relationships, this is just humanity. Like, you can't stand the fact that someone voted for Hillary Clinton, or you can't stand the fact that someone voted for Trump. Like, get over it. There's gonna be people that disagree with you, no matter what your stance is. And you can come with all of your facts and figures from either side that say this is right and you're wrong and humanity this and blah, 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 that. Everyone has a different perspective. And so if you can't come into, and a lot of times the reason why we can't get off our personal, I'm right and I can't accept something that looks at it the other way, is because you're insecure. What I tell people all the time, like, I had this dude that used to always want to debate with me because he was an atheist and he knew that I believe in Jesus and the Bible and stuff. And he would hate debating with me because it would never turn into an argument. Like, I'd agree with most of the stuff that he said because he was this wannabe scientist that read a couple journals or whatever, and he didn't know I am actually a scientist. I was like, yeah, that makes total sense. What was the problem with that? He's like, well, but you're supposed to be Jesus. I was like, but, and so I have tolerance. Like, I'm okay with the fact that he doesn't believe what I believe. The only reason I would feel the need to try to convert him, which, by the way, read the Bible if you're going around trying to convert people, not your lane. Not even in your job description. Your job description is to spread good news, then shut your mouth and get off stage. Okay? So for my Bible believers that are going around yelling at everybody, cut it out. That's why nobody wants to hang out with us in the first place. 2, I'm okay with him being an atheist. It doesn't bother me. Like, it's fine, bro. You don't believe, you think what I think is ludicrous? Awesome. Some of what I believe is ludicrous. And I'm a scientist. Some of what you believe in science is also ludicrous. But we still believe it. Who cares? Right? So, if you have no tolerance, you can forget finding a perfect match. Like, if you have to have something like, and it's and I'm not picking on you for asking it because it's an amazing question, but it's a very selfish question. And that's part of the problem with relationships is most people enter into relationships looking for their own selfish, how is this human being going to make me happy? And if they don't have the right personality type, that's not going to work. Well, there's some truth to that, but the issue isn't their personality. It's how they behave despite their personality. Right? My brother is an ISFJ. It doesn't get much more different from me than that. We get along fine, even with our very different idiosyncrasies. He's very protective of his possessions. He was a collector. He likes to keep things pristine. Look at my office. It's a freaking mess. Don't care. I mean, it's a mess because we have a lot going on, not because I'm violently disorganized. But if he wanted, like, if I'm in his house and he wants things to be a certain way, I'm not going to start whining because it's not the way I want it. Right? And when he comes to my house, he shows me the same respect because we have tolerance, respect, empathy, and acceptance of the fact that we're just different. Like, we get it. It's totally cool. Like, I'm building an entrepreneurial life. My brother doesn't want anything to do with that. He's like, dude, just give me the check. I'll show up at the thing. But that doesn't make him wrong and me right. It just means we're different. So I'm not going to spend hours and years trying to convert him into an entrepreneur because I'm not capable of doing that. Let him be who he is. And so in a relationship, you got to let the other person be who they are because you signed a contract, and I don't mean a legal contract, but a spiritual one if we believe marriage in the same way. Maybe we don't, but the bottom line is you're taking an oath when you take vows, if you take them, for the other person. So my wife is stubborn. You know, you guys always hear me talk about how much I love her and I like her and she's amazing. She's all those things. She's also stubborn as hell. Do I like that all the time? No. Do I try to change her? Like, you know, you really need to stop being so... No, she's stubborn. Who cares? Ugh. Why are we going to let her stubbornness affect the peace of the house? When it's not like... And literally, we're arguing over which one of us is going to go wake up our mother-in-law. Like, I'll just go do it. It's not even... Why would I let that turn into some strife? And so... we have to grow. Yes, I do think that certain types have a probability better than others to get along, right? But there's always going to be exceptions to that rule. I'd say where most of, now getting to your actual question, that was a long preface, but I think it needs to be said because I don't want anyone getting into these pigeonholes of, well, I'm an ENTJ, so I got to start looking for ESFJs. No, you need to start looking for someone who's tolerant, someone that has your values, your same motivations, all right? The personality type becomes, because we can behave despite how our personality is. A lot of times I have TE, my wife leads with FE. That is a conflict all the time if we don't learn how to balance it. Sometimes I have to shut off my wife sharing something she feels, I have to turn off let me help you fix that with this system. No, shut up, idiot. I don't want a system. Just shut up and listen so I can feel better. Right? Or if I'm pissed off about something, let me give you a hug. I don't want a hug when I'm mad. I want to fight somebody. And she's learned that. And I've learned that. It's tolerance. We lead with two opposite end of the spectrum cognitive functions. We get along fine. Because we also complement each other. I get to tell her when she's being taken advantage of. She gets to tell me when I'm being a jerk. Tolerance, acceptance, empathy. Right, got to be there. But I will say that N and S types can run into a lot of conflict because of the way they process information. So the way you have to communicate with an S type a lot of times is a lot more what I call tactical. It's a lot more detailed and factual. Okay? The S types are going to get into the weeds, especially very strong S types. Your N types are going to think conceptual and big. Like, dude, can you just see the point I'm trying to make and stop focusing on the fact that I misspelled the word does? Like, shut it. Like, but you got to accept that. So there can be a lot of conflict between S and N. If those people aren't mature, they're not developing as human beings. 2, F and T, like I just told you the example with me and my wife, can butt heads quite a bit, especially if the T is highly secure and confident and the F is an insecure person. And now I'm not talking about my wife because she's not that, but I've dealt with F types that are highly emotionally insecure. And there is a very careful dance that you have to do with those people, because if you bruise that F, it's like kicking a hornet's nest. All right? So what you want to do in that case is not avoid the F. What you're trying to avoid is the immaturity. Again, not being criticizing. Like, they just haven't emotionally matured where they can accept criticism, for example. And not criticism, they can accept critique. So there's more nuance to it than just trying to match a type with a type. J's and P's are going to get on each other's nerves because the J wants to schedule everything and the P's like, dude, let's just go to the beach. All right, so it's empathy. E's and I's are the only ones where you're not going to really run into any conflict. I would say N and S is probably where you get the most of it because it's how we process. And then F and T is the next one. But you can look at it as conflict, or you can look at it as complementing each other. And when you have true acceptance and tolerance of another person, then you learn to appreciate the fact that this S-type is highly tactical, because they help you do things that you can't do as a big. They're the accountant. I told you I suck at being an accountant. I don't know that I would hire an accountant that wasn't an S-type. I want the person managing my money to be highly anal. Hopefully that helped. And that answered the question. Let's see how many comments and questions I missed. All right. Comments. Okay, so Sean Prater says, Brian, you were so right about being in the place you were meant to be in. The money will definitely follow if you, yeah, it just will. Because it's the more you learn, the more you earn. That's a famous Warren Buffett quote. Ty Lopez uses that quote a lot too. But it is true. Like, you being in a place where you're supposed to be, you're only going to get better, which means you're going to be more valuable, which means you're going to make more money, versus trying to chase the money and then add value. Add value first, the money will follow. Fly Canuck says, I guess specifically, I'm just a bit at a crossroads right now, and I don't know how to figure out which path to take, have the option to refine my skills or branch out to new ones. So when you're talking, I'm not sure what your personality type is. I may get a little technical on you here, but use math. Use math to determine, okay, how much time is it going to cost me to develop new skills? And now remember, they can't be brand new skills, because then you're starting over and you don't want to do that. You want to double down on your strengths. But if there is something you need to add to your tool belt, how much time is that going to take you away from the work that you're doing? Or could you just go to another place where your skills would be appreciated and make it much easier to not have to learn new skills? So I don't think it's necessarily a crossroads where you have to be in this violent dilemma. It's just do the math. If Microsoft is hiring for whatever it is you do and you love Microsoft, then make some connections and work to get that gig, versus trying to go take another college course and learning. Like, I just think there's ways for, if you have skills, you can find a place to apply them if you're creative about how you're solving that problem. TE is not included in my top 4 function. Okay, so yeah, if it's one of those things where, remember, extroverted thinking is a decision-making process, right? So it's just something that you may not have. But what I would tell you is, behaviorally, when you're making a decision, because you're an INFJ, so I imagine you have FI, or I think it's FE. But so because TE is not one of your decision-making gates, you're always going to make decisions based on your values, which is cool. Every once in a while, go against that. Like, if you're trying to develop it, like, here's an outcome that it's not going to make you compromise your values, but it's going to make you maybe make somebody else slightly uncomfortable, but the outcome's going to be amazing. It's going to be a little harder for you. It's easy for TEs. So try it. Just be like, I'm going to make this decision even though my values, my spidey sense is tingling a little bit, but it's not going to really hurt anybody, and the outcomes for everyone's going to be amazing. And then it's a behavioral thing. So then that becomes more comfortable for you to make decisions, because a lot of times I make decisions based on FE. I have no FE, but I can adjust my behavior to mirror what an FE would do if I'm surrounded by them, because I can make a conscious choice. My default is not going to be to do that, so I have to catch myself and consciously, okay, like, I think, what would Miko do? She totally wouldn't do this because it's going to hurt so-and-so's feelings, so I adjust. But I don't do it all the time. But if you're trying to develop behavior, then I think that's totally possible, because I don't think you're really going to do too much to rewire this the way it defaults, but you can kind of hack the system, is what I talk about when I say develop cognitive functions. And again, I'm no expert. I may be totally using incorrect technical terms, but that's the way that that's what's been successful for me. So it's kind of how I've adjusted it. Jocelyn says I'm the perfect match for me. Well, there's polygamy now. Aren't people marrying themselves? Another thing. Want to be a scientist that read a couple journals. LeBrew says, good points you just made. But for instance, I have, let's say, well-developed ESTJ friend, and he says, dude, I can't empathize. It's not impossible. He's not made to match. No, that's the problem with Myers-Briggs, is people start to, well, this is the problem with how people use Myers-Briggs, is you start to self-actualize. Well, I'm an ENTJ, so that just means I'm going to be outspoken and a jerk, and I just can't empathize with people. BS. You can totally empathize with people because it's a choice. What you have to do is become consciously aware that you have a default, and then just take the opposite action when you know it's the right thing to do. There's times where I've gotten into a heavy debate with an FE person, and then I lose the fight. I'm just like, hey, you know what? This isn't worth us bruising us. Like, if this really means this much to you, I don't necessarily think it's right, but look, if it means that much to you, I'm willing to support you. Because clearly it means more to you than it does to me. All I want is the outcome, but you want to make sure the humans involved are taken care of. And I respect that about you. And I totally empathize with this person, and we keep it moving. So to say he can't empathize, there's an immaturity there, he or she. There's an immaturity there, and there's an unwillingness to adapt. And that's the problem. It's not that they can't empathize, it's that they won't. Don't ever mix those two things up. You can totally empathize. They're just too mentally or maybe even emotionally lazy to do it. And I'm not saying that to be discouraging. They need to man up and, get that done. All right. All right. Sean says, I agree with you talking about people growing out of their Pampers. Let's see. LeBrew says, you get along because you are both healthy types. The problem is when people only use the first two functions, they must be the same types in order to... No, listen, everything I'm telling you is choice. Yes, you have a default setting, but you can choose to hack the system. And that's what I'm telling you is going to be more valuable than relying on matching a personality type. Hack the system. Develop the empathy. Develop the, because for real, who wants to be with a person who's not willing to make themselves a better person? Over, you're just going to be the same, I'm going to be the same dude she married 15 years ago? I haven't changed at all. I haven't become a better human being at all. I haven't read a book. She would be right to be like, dude, I'm out. You're still 21 years old or however old we were when we got married. You're still a child. I can't. That's more important than our personality type. And that's why I'm saying we get into this personality type stuff like it's the freaking end all be all of this is going to be the answer to everything in my life. It's not. It's just a piece of it. It's just to give you a glimpse, right? It's not to tell you exactly this is what you are and what you must do. It's to give you a glimpse. Again, this is my opinion. Maybe people disagree with me. But talking about how it's the choosing to use the functions, it's forget about the functions for a second. Choosing to be a good human being is a choice, okay? I don't care how TE I am. If I'm in a room of people who are trying to make a decision with FE, at some point, I have to be a good human being and respect the fact that this is how these people make decisions. Now, I'm within my rights to make a case for why I think the outcome justifies potentially maybe causing some discomfort for the people in the room. But that's it. It's just a suggestion. If the room then decides, no, dog, we got to do this because then I have to adjust. You have to be willing to compromise. And that goes both ways. The other person every once in a while has to say, you know what, let's go with what B is saying. Because if we do it our way, it's going to take 7 years, which is usually what I'm arguing about. Is that's great, but it's going to take a very long time, and we may miss a deadline or whatever, right? So it's just willingness. Most people just aren't grown up enough to be willing to not have and what it boils down to, most people aren't grown up enough to accept the fact that the world doesn't revolve around them and their personality type. Right? That's why you hear so many people, they can't figure out my personality type, or they think I'm an S type, or this or that or this. It's because I come in and out of different things to adjust myself to the audience. Period. when I'm with my wife, I'm going to shut the TE off if she's venting. I'm just not going to use it because I'm consciously aware of the fact that while she's talking, I have already figured out the solution to her problem 3 words into the sentence. But I'm going to shut the F up because she needs to get this off her chest. That is empathy. That's being a grown-up. It didn't change the fact that the whole time I wanted to blurt out, but I didn't. Right? Because I developed the maturity to act right. Cool. Polite Canuck says, thanks for the advices. Gives me a bit more to think about. Cool. Pascal says, self-divorce. Let's see. Sean Prater says, I still think FE is illogical. Got news for you, Sean Prater. All humans are illogical because we're all emotional creatures. Feeling is a decision-making process. But make no mistake, I don't care how logical you think your prefrontal cortex is, you are still being driven by the elephant of your brain, which is the primate part of your brain. Prefrontal cortex only gets to ride the elephant. We are all emotional and irrational people. Every once in a while, we just behave with some rationale. And that's more biological. It's partially psychology too, but a lot of that has to do with how we've developed over time as human beings. Now then, see, Fernando says, I found out I was an ENFP last night, and I truly agree that I'm capable of rewiring my mind as much as others can too. I'm in control of me. There you go. Again, what the Myers-Briggs is very good at is giving you your default setting. So it's like when you're under pressure, it's going to be much harder to do what I'm talking about, but just developing the willingness is what's important. He says, how late am I? Pretty late, man. We're winding down here. Sean says, so Bryant, you're telling me that you don't indiscriminately use TE. Indiscriminately? I'm not sure what you mean by indiscriminately. Are you saying that I don't, do you mean like subconsciously, like I just rely on my defaults? Because if you're saying, do I ever rely on my defaults? Yeah, all the time. If that's what you meant. Yeah, and so on LeBrew's comment about we're all emotional and irrational, that's not a Myers-Briggs thing. That's just that's a human the way we work. So when I say emotional, that's separate from being a feeler. Okay, I did a video on the difference between feelings and emotion, where emotion are the biological functions in your body that keep you alive. So when you see a saber-toothed tiger and you get scared and run, that's your emotions kicking in as a survival mechanism, right? Even though saber-toothed tigers don't exist anymore, so that would be really scary. But the prefrontal cortex part of our brain, the logical part of our brain, is a much smaller piece of the pie, right? So all of our decision making starts here, right? Our prefrontal cortex can take that information and then logically break it down. But we're all emotional. That's different from feeling. Feeling is about whether we make decisions based on outcomes or we make decisions based on people, right? That's where feeling a lot of times gets confused with emotion. Like, I'm not an emotional person, I'm an ENTJ. Yes, you're emotional. Wait till someone insults your intelligence. We'll see how emotional you are, because you'll freak out. Because it's a survival mechanism. Our intelligence is one of our main strengths in our mind. So when you attack it, that primate brain kicks in survival mode. I gotta kill this dude because he's trying to destroy me. Let's see. Pascal says, my ex-girlfriend tried to convince me her PS3 game worked in her 360 one time. It was completely illogical, and I was right to say so. But saying so did not help. Yeah. Well, and the other thing too, that not just personality types, but when someone thinks they're right about something, you're not convincing them. Like all the people, I get speeches from people on every side of politics why Trump is the best thing that ever happened on earth, and then other people telling me why he's the Antichrist. And I'm telling them I don't care either way. Like, whatever. Enjoy your bureaucracy. Right? So it's, I'm not going to convince that person, well, technically, Trump, blah, blah, blah. Like, I could tell him, Trump is, at night, he leaves the White House and, blows up abortion clinic. Like, it's not going to convince them if they believe something. It's just not going to happen. Ferrero says, oh man, I'm definitely going to catch future segments. Bruce says, can you reveal something about the 2 other personality tests, apart from Enneagram and MBTI, you're going to make in the channel? Yeah, I'm just going to talk about them similar to how I do the Myers-Briggs stuff. Cool. I finally made it to the end of the comments. It only took me, it says 135 minutes. I think that's how I'm supposed to read that. Polite Canuck says, being willing to be wrong and being able to change your point of view is the most important skill you can have. Yeah, it's very important. It's not about being wrong, because a lot of times neither party is wrong. It's just both parties see something very differently. And you have to be like, look, I get that a lot of what I'm saying sounds extreme to some of you, but you have to understand my life experience. Like, I've been in a situation where I literally had to kiss my wife as I walked away from our car to go get on a plane to go to a foreign country where people were trying to kill me, where I didn't get to talk to her again for several months. And even that was sketchy. And then didn't get to see her again for God knows how long. Like, do you think I'm really going to come home and argue about what color the freaking living room should be? So a lot of the things where you run into conflicts just don't exist in my world because they don't matter. Like, I have seen death. So for me, life is way too short to be fussing over things. This plays out in relationships and people I know. It plays out in career. It plays out in my business, where I'm just not going to bring myself to care about something that's not worth fussing about. Like, I get it. So it's not about being wrong. It's just like, look, this really matters to you. It ain't a big deal. I'm cool. Let's paint it pink. Let's rock. Woo! Let's rock. I don't care. Like, I cannot bring myself to care about things that aren't driving my family's livelihood forward. And if it's literally something petty, it's not about me being wrong or me always giving in. It's just, I don't care. I'm just conditioned not to care. So for some of you, that may be a bridge too far. That's why I say my advice, take it with a grain of salt, because you may care. You may have a man cave that you don't want painted pink, and that's important to you. I'm not saying that's wrong. Like, just pick your spots, man. Pick your battles. And pick the ones that matter. ENFP and info are different. I think you meant INFP. Okay, cool. Let's see. You were very right, Bryant. I think personally I have become obsessed a little bit with MBTI. And that makes one a little elitist. Like, I'm not talking with that person because, well, it's, I would say that's not so much, and maybe elitist is the right word. I don't want to attack your semantics, but it's just insecurity. Like, most people are coming to MBTI because they want to know more about themselves. They want to be secure in who they are, and they want to find out, why do I feel the way I feel in the world? And why do other people behave like they behave? Right? Like, why do people act like this? I don't get them. So I want to understand more about them because it makes me feel more comfortable in my space. So you saying I can't talk to that person because they're whatever type, that's usually based upon, I imagine, previous experience with someone where it went poorly. But again, that has less to do with Myers-Briggs and more to do with the fact this person's just a prick. Like, some people are just jerks. It doesn't matter what, like, there are ENTJs who are literally freaking tyrants. It doesn't mean we all are. You see what I'm saying? Like, there are people who believe we're cold, dastardly people that use people. Nothing could be further from the truth for most of us. You know, I know several ENTJs, and I'm very, like, they are the most, in some cases, because what I see a lot of times with feelers, the way that they care, and I'm not saying this is the truth, it's just the way it comes across. The way that they care sometimes seems, I don't know the right word, because it's not superficial, is not what I mean, but it's like the way that they show their care is very outward and kind of on the surface, versus like my ENTJ buddies, when I busted my ankle, and this is one of my bros from the Army, like he and I literally fought together, and it was funny because we didn't know we were fighting together until we met each other years later, and like, he's like, oh, you hurt your ankle? I got this thing at home. I'm going to go, like, he went home, put this whole thing together so I could have this ankle brace to get better. Because we were doing workouts together and he wanted me to stay with the team. Like, he went out of his way to make that happen for me. Like, that's the level of care that an ENTJ has for their people. Now, the public perception of us is that we're cold, and it's because our decision-making process is based on outcomes. But it doesn't mean we don't care deeply about the people. In fact, some of the, like, one of my business partner, right, Tone, he and I are in the gym yesterday, and I can see that he's hurting. We're doing back. He is in pain. He lets the weight go and he goes to drop the weight. I grab him, sit him back in the chair, and I put the weight back on heavy, and I say, you got 2 more reps. Now, to the outside audience, it looked like, man, this dude in the freaking, the Walgreens hat, which is what people love to call this thing, which I think is hilarious. They're like, yo, this dude is a freaking tyrant. He's trying to kill this dude. No, I know this dude, me and this dude are in the trenches together, and I want him to know that, 1, I have his back. 2, I know he's got more in the tank, and he's going to thank me when he gets stronger. I caused a little bit of pain up front for a huge payoff. The end of the workout, man, we hugged each other. It's like, dude, you did a freaking amazing job. I'm so proud of you for getting through that little bit of pain that I know is going to have a huge payoff. Right? So at the end of the day, a lot of our outcomes that we seem so cold about are about the people. It's just the way we get there doesn't necessarily consider the people in the superficial or the smaller things. In the big picture, it's all about the people. You know, when you look at what the NT personality type, the Greek mythology god they're related to is Prometheus. For God's sake, he's the dude that took the fire from the gods and brought it to the people. You could argue that ENTJs care more about the people than most, but the way it comes across, it doesn't seem that way. And I have a family full of feelers that remind me that I come across that way. But I have to remind them, intent is the most important thing, and my intention is for your benefit. So those are the things you have to think about. Is there's stereotypes, but you don't want to pigeonhole someone just because you had one bad experience or you had several bad experiences. It doesn't mean everybody, you know, 3% means there's, I think, 6 million ENTJs in the United States. Not very many people compared to how many people are in the United States, but not all of them are evil. All right, so. So I see Footy Coach is asking a lot of questions about the letters that we're using. So Footy, just when we're done here, rather than try to explain it to you because it's a lot, just go to 16, the number 16, personalities.com and take the test. And literally the test will explain everything to you in a great amount of detail. So you'll be like, oh, okay, then you'll know what you are. Then you can look up all these other letters that we keep tossing around. So I don't want you to be left out of the conversation, but you know, an ENTJ means that I'm extroverted, I'm an intuitor. Okay, so I'm extroverted. I get energy from being around people. I'm an intuitor, which means that the way I process information is in frameworks, big pictures, right? Able to understand very complex things and boil them down into simple principles. right? Versus focusing on the details that an S would focus on instead of an N. A T as a thinker, decision-making process. I make decisions oftentimes based on outcomes and facts and data and logic versus making decisions based on how those decisions are going to affect my values or other people. And a J being a judger. The quickest way to understand a judger is they take definitive action, okay? So you can see that I'm a person that does not mince words. I'm never indecisive. A lot of times P's, I need to keep my options open, man. I just want to be free. J's are get it done. This is the action we're going to take, execute. All right, so obviously I don't always come across that way on camera. A lot of times people have trouble reading me because the way that I present is being respectful to an audience that may not appreciate all of my ENTJ-ness, but that's the deal. That's what the letters mean. And then there's obviously letters that are the opposite of that. The I for the introvert, the S for the sensor instead of the N, the F for the feeler instead of the T for the thinker, and the P for the perceiver instead of the judger. So when you take the test, all will make more sense to you. Raven says, words out of my mouth for footy there, BC. Deleted what I was writing. Excellent. So Ferrero Fernando says, John, for real. All based on decisions on how they chose to use their abilities and who they associate with. Footy says, sorry if I was a lot of questions. I was feeling uncomfortable. No. Don't be sorry. You're part of the family now, brother. I assume you're a guy because you have a picture of Optimus Prime. But I don't know. But awesome picture, by the way. But you don't have to be sorry, man. If you don't, always ask if you don't understand something, and I'm happy to. I mean, that's a very insanely basic explanation. But at least you have a little bit more information so you can understand. We're throwing all these letters around like, what are these people talking about? All right. But when you take the test and then you can look up the cognitive functions for your type, and then this TI and TE and FE, all the stuff that we're tossing around will start to make a lot more sense. And so when you take the test, it shouldn't take you more than about 10 minutes. And it's way more simple than it sounds when you hear people, it sounds like we're speaking Japanese or a different language. Once you read it, it's like, oh, okay, this stuff really isn't that complicated. Some people like to make it complicated, but it's really not, A lot of smart people spend a lot of years taking very complicated things and boiling them down to make sense. All right, ladies and gents, it is now midnight. Last call for questions. Last call for questions because I got to go to bed because I got to coach basketball tomorrow with my kiddies. But I will take any last-minute burning questions you have. As always, a couple of things to remember. If your question did not get answered, if somehow I missed it, it was not on purpose. It's because YouTube gives me a window that's about this big to see the comments, and it takes me a while to answer questions. If for whatever reason we didn't get to your question, there's a couple things you can do. Get at me on Facebook. BryantChambers page is the page, and you can send me a direct message. I read them all. I don't always respond the same day, but I will respond to questions as I have time, or rather as I make time. Or when this video is finished processing, you can just come back into the video and retype your question, and then it'll be there forever because for whatever reason, YouTube decides that all of this whole conversation that we just had is going to be deleted for some insane reason. But, I've had enough of cussing at YouTube for the silliness of their platform. When they give us so much good, it doesn't make sense to complain about the one or two things that aren't amazing, right? And nobody's going to listen to me complain anyway. But, and I do encourage you all to follow me on other social media, because the thing you'll learn, especially for those of you who are using social media to build a brand, is that every platform is different. I present very differently on every platform because the context surrounding those platforms is different. It would not be so, and I've had this happen, and I've had to delete them, not because somebody did something bad, but someone will literally say, hey, can you shoot me an email? I want to ask you this question, and the YouTube filter will grab that comment and not publish it. I'll go and email that person, and then I will delete the comment because I don't want the whole world to see this person's email address. YouTube is not good for that. What is good for that is Facebook, because you can send that to me privately without having to go through a bunch of inconveniences the way you have to do it on YouTube, if you even know how to do it. Kudos if you do. Most people don't. But on Facebook, you can just go to my page and hit message and literally send me, hey, I've got this question. When you get a chance, could you answer it for me? Instagram. And on Facebook, I focus heavily on similar things to YouTube, but video content there is consumed very differently. So I'm working on building different content for Facebook, but I also have a lot more conversations on Facebook that YouTube doesn't allow us to have. Instagram is all about inspiration. I basically post book reviews and Bible quotes, or interesting quotes that I find that I think are uplifting and helpful to people. But you definitely want to get on there. And then Snapchat, if you're just down for that's where I do all my fun comedy music stuff. I still have an entertainer in me. He doesn't come out as often as I used to with the gaming stuff I used to do or music, but I still have that in me. I still do miss the stage from time to time, even though I get to come on stage every week from my own house versus having to drive to some club somewhere to play. But Snapchat's just for fun. I'm BryantChambers on Snapchat. I'm BryantChambers Lives on Instagram. I am BryantChambers page. So don't send me a friend request to my main Facebook page, like my main Facebook, because I don't use that. I live on my Facebook fan page because one, it'll allow me to have 1 million people talking to me versus I reserve my Facebook account for my family and the soldiers I used to work with, so that I can keep that separate from the work that I do and the people that I talk to here, because Facebook will only let you have so many friends, so it would eventually tap out. I don't want that to happen. But plus, I'm never on my timeline because I don't want to look at people's cats. No, I'm on my page interacting with people there. Yeah, if you're not on the mailing list, that's at the top of the YouTube channel. I would get on that. It's where I send out updates. I don't know if I'm forgetting anything. I just want to make sure you guys know how to get in contact with me. Let me look at some of these last minute questions. Footy says, keep up the great content. Have a great coaching session, BC. I shall. Thank you so much. Let's see. John Bernard says, Ferrero, I'm agreeing with you. Personality doesn't define a person. A small piece. Polite Canuck says, thanks again for the videos. Yeah, and don't forget, every weekday, guys and ladies, I do a daily vlog called the Daily Bravo. There's a lot of information in those vlogs that I do not cover in the personality type stuff that covers a lot of the questions we got tonight. Not complaining, I'm happy to answer those questions, but I answer them in pretty great detail a lot of times. Like today's video, I think, was, you should never get married if... So there's some things that I want to warn people about. Next week or the week after, I have another video very similar to that coming out called Falling in Love is a Lie. Because it is a lie. Right? And then I explain why. So a lot of the questions that you have for me here, I'm giving, I'm not doing a 2-hour show. I'm doing hey, this is what you need to know. Boom, 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 boom. And then I get off the stage. So definitely do not sleep on the daily vlog. I know the personality type videos are more popular. That's cool. I'm happy to keep making those. But the vlog is where you're going to get a ton of additional context that helps flesh out some of the stuff we talk about on the personality videos. All right. Okay, says super cool. You may receive a message from Dylan. Okay, cheers, Raven. All right, cool. Looks like you guys are talking to each other, so great. And that's the other thing I want to happen. Make sure that you're interacting with one another on all of these channels, because it's not just about what I have to say. It's about what we have to say as a community. Because remember, if anything, my main job, my main focus, my main vision here is to eradicate the fear, the confusion, the disbelief, all of the things, the resentment and the pain that's happened in your life, is to help you understand there's ways to get out of that and to get into the success you want to see, whether it's work, whether it's, family, whether it's building your own family, starting relationships. Like if I could destroy the cloud of fear that covers this world, that causes us to be so hyper competitive with one another when we should be collaborating. There's a reason why I say we are stronger than I, because you and I together are always going to be way more powerful than I could ever be by myself. Right? That's why Jesus had disciples. And remember what he told them before he left, when they marveled at his amazing works. He's like, dude, you're going to do way better and more stuff than I did if you keep the faith. Fortunately, we haven't really been doing that, which is why the world sometimes is so ridiculous. But that's for another talk. Allow me to thank every one of you for coming out tonight. Let me check these last comments here. Thank MS for compliment on pick BC. Okay, not sure what that means, but word. Night to Raven, says somebody. Good night, peeps. Jocelyn says bye. Bye, Jocelyn. Thanks for coming. Hey, BC. How, I'm not sure what how is. How would I get NY my game ideas in front of people who can help make it happen practically? Hold on, thanks for the compliment on my pick, BC. Got it, man. Thank you for putting up an awesome pick. So how can I get my ideas? So remember, your ideas are not where you're going to make your money. You need to go hone your skills. I would go learn from existing game developers. One you can go learn from right now is a guy named James, who's on a channel called Extra Credits. I'd watch every video they've created on game design because they also talk about how to actually get into the industry. Not very many people are going to care about your ideas. They're going to care about how can you execute an idea such that it can make them give a product to their customers that make them happy. So watch everything James has to say on that channel because he's a prolific game designer. And I think you could watch videos like Errant Signal, Chris Franklin, who's actually in my book. Actually, both of those people are in the book that I wrote, the YouTube Survival Guide. And they'll give you a lot of insight about game design and the complexities and really how well-versed you need to be in history, philosophy, religious study. Like as a game designer, you got to love reading because you're going to have to know a ton of things. So I would do that. John says, could you address how to find good mentors? Not necessarily tonight, but sometime soon. Yeah, actually, I did a video called How to Find a Mentor. It was one of my daily vlogs 2 or 3 weeks ago, talking about the mentor that I found recently in my life, who's been a blessing to my life because he and I had just met in person prior to me filming that video. So go check that video out. It's in the daily Bravo playlist. If you go to the homepage of the channel, you get there. So, yeah, definitely. And I could probably touch on it again later in another video if that doesn't answer the question for you. But yeah, like I said, y'all, I love you guys. I hope you got something really good out of tonight. In fact, I know you did. What I'm hoping, more importantly, is that you'll be able to actually go and apply it in your life, make it useful, and make some change in the world because I can't change this place by myself. That's why we're stronger than I. I love you guys. I will see you. I don't know if I'm shooting anything tomorrow, but I think it's all ready tomorrow. So you're welcome. God bless. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys soon. How do I turn this thing off?